Chapter 4867. Seeing Shi Wu's strange expression, Fan Di said proudly, "Who dares to pretend to be a disciple of the fallen immortal sect in the Maple Cliff country? We were invited by sect leader Lu of the Chan He sect to help us. Considering that the Flying Shadow sect is also a branch of the Maple Cliff country, it is not easy for you to survive in the current world. So, if you know what's good for you, quickly lead your disciples back and swear a blood oath not to offend the Chan He sect. We will not lower ourselves to your level. Otherwise, don't blame us for being ruthless and killing your Flying Shadow sect in front of the Nebula Ridge." Although Fandi's tone was threatening, what he said was true. The Flying Shadow sect and the Chan He sect were equal in strength. There were 4 or 5 nascent soul cultivators in the sect. The reason why the Flying Shadow sect dared to provoke the Chan He sect was because of the flying beasts in the sect. The dozens of nascent soul cultivators of the fallen immortal sect and the disciples of the Chan He sect could definitely kill the Flying Shadow sect disciples brought by Shi Wu. Sure enough, the goat-horned Shi Wu was somewhat hesitant. A pair of flashing golden eyes blinked, as if it was thinking. However, after a moment, Shi Wu raised his head and laughed. He raised his hand and said, "Haha, which hall of the fallen immortal sect are you from? Does your hall master know that you are so arrogant outside? You are really looking for death." Fan Di was furious. As he rubbed his hands, a thick crystal light appeared. However, just as the crystal light was about to fall into the void, Fan Di hesitated. This was because when he activated his spiritual power and a large amount of spiritual energy entered his body, he felt that his lifespan was slipping away bit by bit. Cough, cough. At this moment, a coughing sound came from behind the Flying Shadow sect disciples. Then, a figure swayed in the sunlight and flew out. The coughing sound was not loud, but it was like thunder in the ears of Fan Di and the disciples of the fallen immortal sect. Fan Di and the other disciples of the fallen immortal sect were shocked. They knew that this was the helper that Shi Wu had found. However, when they saw the appearance of the person who came, they could not help but be shocked. The newcomer was a middle-aged cultivator in his 40s. His face was like a full moon, and although he wasn't wearing any battle armor, the golden light flashing around his body condensed into runes. These runes flew with the cultivator's body, and as they flowed, they revealed the shape of spirit armor and covered the cultivator's entire body. Vice Hall Master Huang? Without waiting for the middle-aged cultivator to fly closer, Exiled Monarch and the others all exclaimed in a low voice. They looked at each other and did not dare to be negligent. Although they did not withdraw the magic treasures they had taken out, they all bowed and said, "Disciple greets Vice Hall Master Huang." Vice Hall Master Huang flew closer and glanced at Banished King and the others. He frowned and asked curiously, "Why are you here at Nebula Ridge? Have you reported this to Su Xian?" When Vice Hall Chief Huang said this, Zhijun did not suspect him at all. This was because although Vice Hall Chief Huang was the Vice Hall Chief of Jingshan Hall and did not know the Vice Hall Chief of the Conscian Hall they were in, Su Xian was the deacon of the Conscian Hall. She was in charge of the Conscian Hall disciples entering and exiting the fallen immortal sect. Disciples have already reported to Deacon Su. Banished King didn't dare to hide anything and replied, "Hee, get up. It seems like you were invited by Lu Han Huan to deal with the Flying Shadow sect." Vice Hall Chief Huang smiled slightly. "Today we have arrived at the Dragon King Temple. Yes, yes." Banished King's face was also filled with awkwardness. After all, the person in front of him was an early-stage spirit severing stage cultivator and a Vice Hall Chief of a hall. He was not someone his disciples could go against. Huang Su, just as Vice Hall Chief Huang and Banished King were talking, Shihu with the goat horn said unhappily from afar, "I invited you here to exterminate the Chan He sect, not to chat with your juniors. Now that Nebula Ridge is right in front of you, why aren't you attacking?" Shihu with the goat horn's words were a little rude, and Huang Su's eyes were filled with displeasure. Banished King's eyes turned slightly as if he was thinking about something. Then he looked at the few people beside him. These people exchanged glances with each other, and Banished King hurriedly transmitted his voice. Vice Hall Chief Huang, disciples, and the others came to Nebula Ridge because of the great merit of the fallen immortal sect's spiritual master Huang Qiao. Since we have met Vice Hall Chief Huang today, we are willing to share this merit with you. Spiritual Master Huang Qiao? When Huang Su heard this, he was shocked and ecstatic. How could he not know what Banished King was talking about? Without any hesitation, Huang Su turned his head and said indifferently, "She-Hul with the goat horn, I remember that we had an agreement before coming here. I can help you fend off the elders of the Chan, he sect that you can't fend off. I can also help you fend off the experts of the Chan, he sect. Am I right?" She-Hul with the goat horn nodded and said, "That's right. It's good that you admit it." Huang Su raised his hand and pointed at Banished King and the others. "Although these are my juniors, they are experts that your Flying Shadow sect cannot fend off. If I don't let them attack your Flying Shadow sect disciples, won't that be fulfilling the agreement I made with you?" How could Shi-Hua with the goat horn not understand Huang Su's plan? He laughed and said, That's right. As long as these fallen immortal sect disciples don't attack, I will definitely be able to exterminate the Chan He sect disciples in Nebula Ridge. Sai, we are all from the Fengyan sect. Why are you so anxious to kill each other? Huang Su sighed and said, I know that you have your eyes on Nebula Ridge. As long as Lu Hanhuan agrees to give Nebula Ridge to your Chan He sect, why do you have to be so ruthless? Of course I'm willing. I just don't know if Lu Hanhuan is willing. Shi-Hua with the goat horn arrogantly called himself lousy in front of Huang Su. Seeing that Huang Su was not angry, Banished King and the other fallen immortal sect disciples lowered their heads slightly. Everyone knew in their hearts that Huang Su had gained a lot from this trip. That's good. Huang Su nodded slightly. He looked at Banished King and the others and said, Go and persuade Lu Hanhuan. Yes, I will do as you say. Of course, Banished King did not dare to be negligent. He hurriedly flew to the mountain-protecting formation of Chan He sect and raised his hand to salute. Sect leader Lu, I don't want to say anything more. You've seen everything. The life and death of Chan He sect are only in your hands. As for where to go, I think you must have made a decision. It was definitely out of Lu Hanhuan's expectations that the fallen immortal sect disciples would meet here. He did not expect that Flying Shadow sect's Shi-Hua with the goat horn would actually bring a deputy hall master of fallen immortal sect over. And the fallen immortal sect disciples that he had high hopes for had to salute this deputy hall master respectfully. Lu Hanhuan's face was already pale. Taoist friend banished. Gao Cheng's face was very gloomy. He hurriedly flew forward and said loudly, Do you think this is appropriate? When my sect leader nodded, the ancestral property of Chan He sect was given to Flying Shadow sect. When my sect leader shook his head, Chan He sect and my disciples turned into ashes. What's the difference between this and not inviting you over? I traveled thousands of miles to fallen immortal sect and used the array flag of the heavenly cycle demon subduing star formation to invite you over. Is this an invitation for nothing? Could it be that your previous promise and so on were all perfunctory? You are representing Senior Xian Xiaozi of fallen immortal sect. However, Gao Cheng suddenly thought of something. His face turned pale, and he looked at Banished King with fire in his eyes. He shouted, I understand. Banished King, you didn't even... Humph. Before Gao Cheng could finish his words, Fan Difei flew over and snorted. Gao Cheng, let me ask you, what did we promise you? Didn't you say that Chan He sect was in trouble and that Flying Shadow sect might attack Chan He sect? Did Chan He sect invite us over to help Chan He sect defend against the enemy? If we couldn't come over, Deputy Hall Master Huang could destroy Chan He sect alone. Why would Flying Shadow sect need to attack? If we didn't come over, would Flying Shadow sect give Chan He sect a way out? We came over and stopped Deputy Hall Master Huang from attacking. We also found a way out for Chan He sect. Isn't this enough to repay us? Moreover, the array flag that you gave to the fallen immortal sect belongs to the fallen immortal sect. Don't tell me that you've taken something that belongs to the fallen immortal sect and you still don't want to return it? Lu Pingxi questioned immediately. Gao Cheng raised his hand and pointed at Lu Pingxi. He didn't know what to say. He had given the array flag of the heavenly cycle demon subduing star formation to Fan Difei and the rest for nothing. In the end, he ended up like this. He didn't expect fallen immortal sex disciples to be so shameless. Banished King seemed to be unable to bear it. He persuaded, Sect leader Lu, where there is life, there is hope. Although Chan He's sect abandoned the mountain gate today, your disciples are still here, aren't they? We are grateful that you returned the array flag to fallen immortal sect. However, with our ability, we can only protect your disciples and leave. If you want to do more, it is beyond our ability. I have said all that I can say. As for where to go, it is still up to sect leader Lu to decide. Zhejun's words did sound reasonable. If they had not appeared, the Chanhe sect would have been annihilated. However, the current choice was definitely not the choice that Lu Hanhuan wanted to make. He had given away the array flag and invited fallen immortal sect's disciples over. Not only did he want to be on good terms with fallen immortal sect, but he also wanted to make use of fallen immortal sect's power to drive Flying Shadow sect away. He didn't want to be driven away by Flying Shadow sect. There is no need to consider, Lu Hanhuan said bitterly. He cupped his hands and said, Is Chanhe sect still Chanhe sect without Starcloud Ridge? Today, Flying Shadow sect, let Chanhe sect go. Tomorrow, they will exterminate us. If that's the case, Chanhe sect might as well fight with Flying Shadow sect in front of Starcloud Ridge. I don't believe that Chanhe sect can't defeat Flying Shadow sect. That's right. Yu Zhuohong and Pang Lushing also flew over and sneered. We would rather die in battle than hand over the foundation of our ancestors to others. Alas, sect leader Lu. Banished King wanted to say something, but Fan Di beside him was already impatient. He pulled Banished King and said, Senior brother Banished, Chanhe's sect has already made a choice. This has nothing to do with us. P.S. Fellow cultivators who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian. Vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, donate it. And Chapter 4868. Lu Hanhuan looked at Exiled King's hesitation and said, Fellow cultivator Exiled King, the heavenly cycle demon subduing star formation is in the Shiyi mountain range to the west of Xingyun Ridge. You can find it if you go there. I have to lead my disciples to fight the enemy, so I can't accompany you. Please forgive me. Yu Zhuohong also cupped his hands proudly and said, Sect leader is right. If fellow cultivator Exiled King didn't come, our Chanhe sect wouldn't have been able to escape this calamity. If fellow cultivator Exiled King comes, our biggest threat will be removed, and we will have a fair chance to compete with the Flying Shadow sect. The cost of the array flag is also worth it. Lu Hanhuan's mockery and Yu Zhuohong's arrogance caused the exiled monarch to feel ashamed. His face burned. He naturally knew why he and the others had come here, and what Lu Hanhuan and the others hoped for. Unfortunately, the ways of the world made fools of men. He had to face the seniors of his own sect. He had the will, but there was nothing he could do. Fan Di and the others had already flown to Huang Su's side. The group of fallen immortal sect disciples were waiting for him to return. Exiled King gritted his teeth and said, Forget it. Sect leader Lu, please wait for a moment. I will go and beg Vice Hall, leader Huang. Unfortunately, before he could fly 100 feet away, Shi Wu, who was standing on top of the red python, was already impatient. He opened his mouth and ordered, Everyone, damn it. Banished Lord's expression changed as he cursed under his breath. He wanted to teleport to Huang Su's side, but at this moment, a calm voice rang out. Fortunately, there is still one disciple who has not completely wiped out his conscience. This has given this old man a little more confidence in the so-called Great Sects. If every disciple of the fallen immortal sect is so confusing, inverting black and white, and speaking against their conscience, I really want to keep all of you here and let you know what conscience is. This voice wasn't loud, but it was abnormally clear. The tens of thousands of cultivators in Xingyun Ridge heard it clearly. Huang Su's expression was even worse. His eyes emitted a cold light as he looked at a place in Xingyun Ridge. At this moment, the sun was already rising. The orange sunlight shone on Xingyun Ridge. Xiao Hua walked up to the sky with his hands behind his back. On that seemingly ordinary face, there was a sneer. This sneer was especially glaring under the sunlight. Senior, seeing Xiao Hua fly out, Lu Hanhuan was shocked and hurriedly asked, "Why did you come out?" "You." "Haha, it's fine." Xiao Hua didn't look at Lu Hanhuan, but his gaze fell on Huang Su as he said, "If this old man didn't come out, how could I see the ugly faces of the so-called famous sect's disciples?" "Humph." Huang Su snorted and raised his voice. "Are you talking about this old man?" "Huang Su." Without waiting for Xiao Hua to speak, Shi Wu immediately shouted, "You can't leave. Since the Chan sect has another helper, you have to help me kill this helper." "Shut up." Huang Su's words were like spring thunder as he berated Shi Wu. "Is it up to you to decide whether this old man wants to leave or not?" "Sect Master Lu." Xiao Hua walked to the front of the array and said to Lu Hanhuan, "Open the array and let this old man out." "No, no." Lu Hanhuan hurriedly waved his hand and said, "Senior, how can you go out now?" "Ha! Whether this old man can go out or not, it's not up to you to decide." Xiao Hua smiled slightly and walked towards the 8-colored halo and fog. However, when he walked to the array, his body rippled with the same 8-colored brilliance. Without stopping, he had already passed through the mountain-protecting array of Chan He sect. Lu Hanhuan was a little stunned and was surprised in his heart. Could it be? Senior Zhang didn't. Seeing Xiao Hua fly out from Xingyun Ridge, Huang Su's divine sense immediately swept over. When his divine sense fell on Xiao Hua, Huang Su was surprised again, because there was no fluctuation of magic power around Xiao Hua's body. It was like a mortal who had never cultivated. Moreover, under the fallen immortal sect's secret technique, he couldn't see Xiao Hua's realm. Xiao Hua didn't even have the pressure and bearing of a high-level cultivator. "Who are you? How dare you slander my fallen immortal sect's reputation here?" Huang Su calmed down and asked. Xiao Hua looked at Huang Su and didn't answer directly. Instead, he asked back, "It doesn't matter who this old man is. What's important is you are the disciples of the fallen immortal sect, the backbone of the cultivators of the Fengyan kingdom. If you don't protect the stability of the Fengyan kingdom and don't stop the unnecessary killing between the two sects, who can do it?" "Ha!" Huang Su sneered and said, "Fellow Taoist, aren't you afraid of biting your tongue? You actually put such a big label on this old man. In the Fengyan kingdom, what does the killing between two sects count for? What does the destruction of one sect count for?" In the distance, Shi Hu was the same as Huang Su. He scanned Xiao Hua with his divine sense and didn't see anything special about Xiao Hua. He couldn't help but sneer. He lifted his foot and pointed at the python dragon below him. He said loudly, "Everyone listen to my command, kill." Roar. The crimson python let out a furious roar, and its body rapidly expanded. Tens of thousands of heaven and earth spirit chi swept up like a gust of wind and rushed into its body. A layer of crimson light appeared on the python dragon's body. Following Shi Wu's order, the python dragon brought tens of thousands of birds and beasts to pounce on the Chan He sect's mountain-protecting array. Huang Su didn't see Shi Hu listen to his command and rashly launch an attack order. He frowned slightly, but he didn't stop it. Instead, he looked at Xiao Hua. He wanted to see how Xiao Hua would attack. A trace of disdain appeared on Xiao Hua's face. Then, he didn't move, nor did he activate his magic power. Instead, he opened his mouth, and a roar that was several times more ferocious than a dragon's roar came out of his mouth. Roar! As soon as this roar came out, it was like the cry of thousands of phoenixes and the roar of thousands of dragons. A kind of royal aura that penetrated the souls of thousands of beasts immediately poured out in all directions like the Milky Way. With the outpouring of the aura, the scenery within 1,000 miles changed greatly. High up in the sky, the wind blew and the clouds swayed. Red clouds covered the sky, and the sunlight that was shining down was instantly blocked. The spiritual chi of heaven and earth that was previously gushing towards this place had actually become chaotic and disorderly. Waves of strange hissing sounds rang out from all over the sky. The most terrifying thing was that wherever the whistling sound passed, the previously incomparably ferocious birds and beasts all trembled and fell from the sky. Fear appeared in their eyes, and they tried their best to maintain their bodies. As for the red python under Shihua's feet, its body twitched and shrank rapidly. It was like a small snake coiled in one place and didn't dare to move. Shihua, whose face was inlaid with dragon scales, also held its head with both hands. It seemed to be in extreme pain and rolled in the sky. The dragon scales on its face also emitted a blood-red dim light. After the birds and beasts, a large number of spirit-swallowing bugs fell like debris in the fierce wind. They fell on the heads and bodies of the stunned disciples of the Flying Shadow sect. Although there were many disciples of the Flying Shadow sect, they had already been disordered by Xiaohua's roar. The disciples who rode the birds and beasts seemed to be extremely afraid of Xiaohua's roar. Their eyes were a little dazed, and their bodies fell with the birds and beasts. Huang Su and other disciples of the Fallen Immortal sect were similar to those disciples of the Flying Shadow sect who had never ridden a beast. They only felt that Xiaohua's roar was like a sharp knife piercing their ears, but they didn't suffer any special injuries. However, when Huang Su saw thousands of birds and beasts of the Flying Shadow sect collapse under Xiaohua's roar, he was shocked again. He was entrusted by Shihua, so he naturally not only knew about the Flying Shadow sect, but also investigated the Chanhe sect. From various signs, it was clear that the Chanhe sect was a small sect with no foundation and no backing. The only thing they could do was to desperately select suitable disciples and transfer suitable disciples and their cultivation methods out of the Nebula Ridge. In the entire Nebula Ridge, there was no practitioner who could be his enemy. How could such an unfathomable practitioner appear in the Nebula Ridge in just dozens of days? Moreover, Huang Su knew that the reason why he agreed to Shihua's request was that he valued the rise of the Flying Shadow sect, which was based on raising demonic beasts after the change of the spiritual chi of heaven and earth. The Flying Shadow sect, which was not particularly outstanding before, had frequently annexed other sects with the help of demonic beasts in the past 100 years. Its strength had been several times stronger than before. Otherwise, Shihua wouldn't dare to force the Chanhe sect like this. Now, Huang Su could clearly see that the mysterious cultivator in front of him didn't use any Taoist magic, nor did he use any secret technique. With just his howl, he was able to wipe out the Flying Shadow sect, which was in the limelight. Such means were far beyond his reach. Huang Su's expression was shocked and a little uncertain. He was thinking about how to deal with it. At this moment, Ji Jun's voice fell into his ears. Deputy Hall Master Huang, it's not too late to stop now. Our fallen immortal sect is originally an outsider. Why should we interfere too deeply? That's right. Huang Su's heart moved, and he already had a plan. He turned his head and nodded at Ji Jun and the others. With a wave of his sleeve, his body floated 1,000 feet away. Ji Jun and the others didn't dare to hesitate. They flew with Huang Su and distanced themselves from the Flying Shadow sect and the Chanhe sect. The disciples of the Fallen Immortal sect had made a decision. Lu Hanhuan, who was in the Nebula Ridge, also woke up from his shock. He raised his hand and ordered without hesitation, "Disciples of the Chanhe sect, kill, kill." Pang Lucian and Gao Cheng shouted loudly. They each waved their magic treasures and rushed out of the big formation, pouncing toward Shihua. The other disciples guarding the big formation also activated their magic treasures. They either left the big formation to attack or borrowed the power of the big formation to pounce on the Flying Shadow sect disciples who weren't injured by Xiaohua. As for Lu Hanhuan, he nodded slightly at Yu Zhuohong. The two of them respectfully flew out of the big formation and landed beside Xiaohua. Xiaohua's figure was still tall and thin, but in the eyes of the two, he was already incomparably tall. They knew that with their strength, they wouldn't be able to measure the magical powers of this practitioner in front of them. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it, Qidian. Vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, give it as a reward, and... Chapter 4869. Looking at the disciples of Chan He sect and the disciples of Flying Shadow sect fighting back in panic, Xiaohua, as the instigator, had an indescribable loneliness on his face. Previously, on the 3 continents, the disciples of Tao sect were struggling to survive under the pressure of the Buddhist sect, Confucian cultivators, and demon clan. Now, on the 3 continents, the Buddhist sect, Confucian cultivators, and demon clan were fighting against the world-exterminating ephemera for survival. On the Yilin continent, the 2 Tao sects of Chu-Pu Immortal Alliance were killing each other. Regardless of the Flying Shadow sect's coercion or the Chan He sect's counterattack, Xiaohua felt that there was something strange. Forget it. Xiaohua was bored and waved his hand, capture the sect leader of Flying Shadow sect. You can do whatever you want with him. As for the other disciples, don't hurt them too much. With that, Xiaohua turned and walked towards Xingyan Ridge. Lu Hanhuan was stunned and did not dare to delay. He hurriedly sent a message to Yu Zhuohong. Yu Zhuohong was still unconvinced and wanted to fly over to say something to Xiaohua. At this moment, a light flashed in the air and Huang Su's figure flew over from afar and landed beside Xiaohua. Junior Huang Su greets Senior. Huang Su's figure was not stable, and he immediately bowed. Where was the arrogant look from before? Oh, Xiaohua stood still and looked up and down at Huang Su. He said coldly, "What else do you want? Could it be you really want to fulfill your promise with Flying Shadow sect?" Huang Su smiled and said, "With Senior here, how would Junior dare to make a move?" Junior just wanted to see Senior and asked for Senior's name. Xiaohua smiled and said, "Huang Su, if you want to fight with me because of your promise, then I will look at you differently. Then this old man will have a whole new level of respect for you. There's no harm in telling you my name. Unfortunately, you are not as good as that disciple called Banished Monarch. You did not even keep the most basic integrity of a famous sect. What qualifications do you have to know my name?" "You." Huang Su bit his lips and was a little angry. He did not think that Xiaohua was stronger than him. After all, he had reached the early stage of spirit-severing stage. He put himself in the position of a junior disciple because he did not want to interfere with the grudge between Flying Shadow sect and Chan He sect and let Xiaohua control the situation. But Xiaohua's words were like a knife, mercilessly cutting through the hypocrisy on his face bit by bit, making him truly embarrassed. Looking at the anger in Huang Su's eyes, Xiaohua shouted, "What? Do you want to fight with me now? If you take action now, you won't be fulfilling your promise to the Flying Shadow sect. Instead, you'll be humiliated into anger. Not only will you fail to impress this old man, you will only infuriate this old man and kill you." Then, Huang Su narrowed his eyes and said, "Let's give it a try." Huang Su did not believe that there was a void refinement realm cultivator in Fengyan country that he did not know. Xiaohua, 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 Xiaochun, sect, Sectchun, sect. If there is no accident, you will break through in a few months. Instead of fighting with this old man here and wasting your lifespan for nothing, it is better to think about what will happen after the middle stage of spirit-severing stage. It seems that your lifespan will not be long. Huang Su was shocked. He looked at Xiaohua in disbelief, as if he had seen a ghost. Huang Su was able to become the Vice Hall Master of Jingshan Hall. Naturally, he was outstanding. After he came to his senses, he knelt down and kowtowed without hesitation. "Senior, please save me." Huang Su knelt down. Not only were Lu Hanhuan and Yu Zhuohong surprised, but also Fei Jun, Fan Di, and the others from the Fallen Immortal sect. They were all confused. Was the Hall Master of the Fallen Immortal sect the kind of person who could kneel down casually? "What are you doing?" Xiaohua sneered. "This is a change in spiritual energy. It is the law of heaven and earth. How can I help you?" Instead of kneeling down to me, Why don't you take the heavenly cycle demon subduing star formation's array flag and collect the remains left behind by spiritual master Huang Qiong in the formation? Then, quickly return to the fallen immortal sect and ask for credit from your sect master. That way, the fallen immortal sect can help you extend your lifespan. Senior, it's all my fault. Huang Su did not dare to raise his head. He only knelt in the air and confessed. I shouldn't have listened to the goat horn Shi Wu's bewitchment and come to Xingyun Ridge to offend you. I don't dare to ask for anything else. I only hope that you can forgive me. Xiao Hua had seen thick-skinned people before, but he had not seen many people as thick-skinned as Huang Su. Of course, he knew what Huang Su was asking for, but he did not say it. Instead, he nodded and said, "Don't worry. Why would I lower myself to the same level as a junior? You can go now. I was the one who discovered the heavenly cycle demon subduing star formation. Because I have some karma with the Chanhe sect, I gave the array flag to them. Everything in the array. I didn't touch it. The Chanhe sect also didn't touch it. If you have a conscience, report the matter of the Chanhe sect to your sect master in full detail. Don't forget the Chanhe sect when you reward them. It's not bad that you can do this." Huang Su could not see the depth of Xiao Hua's strength, but when he heard Xiao Hua's words, he was sweating profusely again. These words were not ordinary, and his tone was also not ordinary arrogant. If the person in front of him was not bluffing, then the strength of the person in front of him was definitely not what he could imagine. But when he thought of Xiao Hua's howl just now, Huang Su threw the word bluffing to the back of his mind. But if he really wanted to rely on Xiao Hua's strength to become the sect master of the fallen immortal sect, he felt that it was not very possible. So he thought for a moment, stood up respectfully, and said, "Junior will follow Senior's orders and do what Senior instructed. As for Senior's matter, there's no need to hide. You can report as much as you want." Xiao Hua did not care. He waved his hand and said, "You all go quickly. Don't make any changes." "Yes, Junior understands." Huang Su nodded and replied, "The relic of Huang Qiongzhenren's tribulation is something that the fallen immortal sect has been looking for hundreds of years. Junior boldly invites Senior to come to the fallen immortal sect when you are free, so that the fallen immortal sect can have the opportunity to thank Senior for his generous gift." As he spoke, Huang Su took out a fist-sized item that looked like a seal and handed it over respectfully. He said, "This is the token of the fallen immortal sect. I only have this with me. Senior, please accept it. When Senior arrives at the Sunset Mountain, my sect master will definitely welcome you personally." Xiao Hua told Huang Su about the heavenly cycle demon subduing star array, because he did not want the Chanhe sect to get into any trouble. He did not have any plans to go to the fallen immortal sect. He originally wanted to refuse, but when he heard Huang Su say that the token was not ordinary, he thought for a moment and waved his hand to accept the token. The token was neither gold nor stone. It was pale yellow in color, and the cloud shadow of a mountain range appeared from the token. When one looked at it, the cloud shadow swayed, and the mountain range seemed to be real. Seeing that the token was not ordinary, Xiao Hua knew that Huang Su was not lying. He nodded and said, "I'll accept the token, but I'm not sure when I can go." When Huang Su saw this, he was ecstatic and hurriedly said, "Senior, you can go whenever you want. I'm already grateful that Senior can accept my token today. I was a little reckless before. Now that Senior has accepted the token, I'm relieved. You can go and wait." Seeing that the banished king and the others were about to come over to greet him, Xiao Hua waved his hand and ignored Huang Su. He walked back to the Lap's palace. Huang Su did not dare to move. When Xiao Hua's figure landed on the nebula ridge, he then cupped his hands and said to Lu Hanhuan, "Sect Master Lu, I've offended you today. I'll definitely report today's matter and the matter of the heavenly cycle demon subduing star array to my sect master." Lu Hanhuan was naturally flattered and hurriedly returned the greeting. "I'll have to trouble Vice Hall Master Huang." Huang Su still wanted to ask about Xiao Hua's origin, but he was afraid of making Xiao Hua unhappy. He rolled his eyes and reminded, "Sect Master Lu, Flying Shadow Sect has the intention to force Chanhe Sect. Goat Horn Shi Wu and several elders of Flying Shadow sect must be killed. The other disciples can listen to senior's orders and be lenient. Yes, I know. Lu Hanhuan smiled and said, Senior Zhang is very kind and doesn't seem to like killing. I'll stop before going too far. Don't worry. Huang Su smiled slightly. With Senior Zhang in the Nebula Ridge, I'll report the matter of Chan He sect to my sect master. In the future, in Fengyan country, and even in Chupu Immortal Union, who would dare to have ideas about Chan He sect? I'll have to trouble Vice Hall Master Huang. Lu Hanhuan hurriedly said, I'm also very grateful to Vice Hall Master Huang. Well said, well said. Huang Su saw that the Chan He sect disciples had taken control of the situation and waved his hand. I don't dare to delay. I'll lead the disciples to Shi Yi Mountain Range now. Elder Yu. Lu Hanhuan hurriedly ordered Yu Zhuohong. Vice Hall Master Huang is not familiar with the terrain here. Quickly take Zhang Ji and the other disciples and lead Vice Hall Master Huang over. Yes, Sect Master. Yu Zhuohong replied and released his divine perception to search for Zhang Ji. Huang Su smiled and said, Thank you, Sect Master Lu. I'll take my leave. Watching Huang Su and the others fly to Shi Yi Mountain Range under the lead of Yu Zhuohong and Zhang Ji, Lu Hanhuan's mouth revealed a trace of a cold smile. Putting aside the fact that Lu Hanhuan had led the disciples of the Chan sect to clean up the mess, Huang Su had brought Ji Jun and the others to fly behind Yu Zhuohong. Ji Jun and the others had long been surprised. They all transmitted their voices to inquire about the news. How would Huang Su know too much? He only briefly explained the matter. Looking at Yu Zhuohong in front of him, he said, Elder Yu, I have something to ask. I wonder if it's okay? How could Yu Zhuohong not know what he wanted to ask? He turned around and smiled. Vice Hall Master Huang, do you want to ask about Senior Zhang? That's right, that's right. Vice Hall Master Huang smiled and said, Although our Tsupu Immortal Alliance is big, Fengyan Kingdom is small. Although I'm a Vice Hall Master of the Fallen Immortal Sect, I've seen many seniors of the Immortal Alliance. However, I'm unfamiliar with this Senior Zhang. I don't even know his name. So please enlighten me, Elder Yuan. Of course, if Senior Zhang has any special instructions, you don't have to say it in detail. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it, Qidian. Vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, give it as a reward, and thank you for all forms of support. Chapter 4870. Yu Zhuohong wanted to fabricate more about the relationship between Chan He sect and Xiao Hua, but she knew that the truth would come out sooner or later. With Chan He sect's background, they could not rely on Xiao Hua. In the future, Chan He sect could rely more on Fallen Immortal sect, so she had already reported to Lu Hanhuan before she left. At this moment, she did not hide anything inside. Alas, to be honest, Chan He sect is not clear about Senior Zhang's background. But because Chan He sect's disciple met Senior Zhang when he came out of seclusion, Senior Zhang especially favored Chan He sect. After listening to Yu Zhuohong's explanation, Huang Su slowly came to a realization. He could not help but secretly curse the Chan He sect's ***** luck. However, when he heard that Xiao Hua had used the spiritual root to select a disciple and even used the spiritual root identification technique, he could not help but tremble. His flying figure hovered in mid-air as he exclaimed, Elder are you telling the truth? Of course. Yu Zhuohong said proudly. I even took the method of selecting spiritual roots to the Xiehong Mountain Auction House to bid. How can it be fake? Silly. Huang Su scolded. How can you take this celestial method to the auction house to bid? But after saying that, Huang Su came to a realization and hurriedly corrected himself. Oh, Elder Yu, I'm sorry. I'm a silly one. My Fallen Immortal sect has been worrying about selecting disciples all these years and could not find a way. Now that I heard about this celestial method, I'm overjoyed. Don't blame me, don't blame me. Yu Zhuohong smiled. Not only Deputy Hall Master Huang, but also my sect leader, and I don't understand. But this is Senior Zhang's order, he said. After Yu Zhuohong finished explaining Xiao Hua's words, Huang Su was shocked, Ji Jun was shocked, and all the disciples of fallen immortal sect were shocked. They couldn't compare to the disciples of Chan He sect. Fallen immortal sect was the #1 sect in Fengyan Kingdom, and was also a famous sect in Xiupu Immortal Union. Fallen immortal sect's disciples were much more knowledgeable than Zhuohong. From Xiao Hua's mouth, they had already seen Xiao Hua's bearing and understood. Not to mention Chinese sect, even Fallen Immortal sect wouldn't be able to see Xiao Hua in his eyes. After Yu Zhuohong finished speaking, he took out a few jade slips from his storage ring and handed them to Huang Su, saying, "This is the secret technique of spiritual root selection, which was just handed over to me by my sect leader. Please kindly accept it, Deputy Hall Master Huang." Previously, when Yu Zhuohong had spoken, Huang Su's heart felt as if it had been scratched by a cat. He had been thinking about how to ask for it, but now that Yu Zhuohong had generously handed it over, he couldn't help but be overjoyed. He almost forgot himself as he took it and hurriedly probed it with his divine sense. This, after Huang Su saw it, he couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. He looked up at the exiled monarch and asked, "Where is the exiled monarch?" "I'm here." The exiled monarch looked serious and hurriedly bowed, saying, "I don't know what Deputy Hall Master Huang wants me to do. You take 10 disciples and return to the sect quickly." Huang Su handed the jade slip to the exiled monarch and said, "This jade slip is really too important to our fallen immortal sect. Don't worry, this contribution is far greater than the heavenly cycle demon subduing star array. As long as you bring the method of spiritual root selection back to the sect, the Deputy Hall Master of Conscian Hall will be yours in the future." The exiled monarch was shocked and hurriedly waved his hand, saying, "Deputy Hall Master Huang, this matter is too important, or let the Hall Master bring it back personally." "You silly child." Huang Su looked at the disciples in front of him and said with a smile, "Senior Zhang has just said that I will enter the intermediate stage of spirit severing stage in a few decades. With my ability, I'm afraid I won't have the chance to enter the advanced stage of spirit severing stage again. You are still young. If I don't give this opportunity to you, who else can I give it to? Besides, don't forget that you are the helpers invited by the Chanhe sect, not me." "Yes, I understand." The exiled monarch took the jade slip. Before he could keep it in his storage ring, Huang Su thought of something again and said, "Don't worry. Let me make a copy of this thing first." Deputy Hall Master Huang, I have more here." Yu Zhuohong smiled and took out a few more jade slips and handed them to Huang Su. Huang Su smiled bitterly. This secret technique was too precious, so he lost his composure a little. But he forgot that Xiao Hua's original intention was to make this secret technique public. After taking the jade slip and keeping it carefully, Huang Su ordered the exiled monarch, "Don't stop for a moment. Return to the fallen immortal sect immediately. This secret technique has been spread out. The earlier it is used, the earlier the fallen immortal sect will benefit. By the way, remember, you must inform the sect master. If the sect master is free, please come to Xingyun Ridge personally. Since Senior Zhang has the secret technique of spiritual root selection, he must also have the secret technique of spiritual root cultivation. He has just come out of seclusion and hasn't made the secret technique public yet. Our fallen immortal sect can beat him to it. It will be good for the future development of the sect, and even the sect master's own cultivation." Seeing that Huang Su was so serious about this matter, Yu Zhuohong's expression changed. Xiao Hua had previously mentioned that these secret techniques could bring about disasters and opportunities. She and Lu Hanhuan were very hesitant. They originally wanted to discuss carefully before making a decision, but they didn't expect that the fallen immortal sect's disciples and the flying shadow sect disciples would attack them one after another. Before Yu Zhuohong left, he simply transmitted a few words to Lu Hanhuan. Both of them felt that the fallen immortal sect was a big sect, so they must have their own way of selecting disciples. Therefore, they chose to offer the method of spiritual root selection to the fallen immortal sect in exchange for protection, and temporarily hide the news of the spiritual root cultivation method. Unfortunately, They didn't expect that the fallen immortal sect didn't have an effective method of selecting disciples. Moreover, Huang Su deduced that Xiao Hua had the spiritual root cultivation method from the method of spiritual root selection. Yu Zhuohong couldn't help but think of what Xiao Hua said. It wasn't an alarmist talk. Fei Jun also carefully kept the jade bamboo slip. He turned around and picked 10 junior brothers who were close to him. He bowed and said, "Deputy Hall Master Huang, I'll go back first. Please be careful." Oh, and Huang Su noticed the change in Yu Zhuohong's expression. He slapped his forehead and shouted, "Tell the sect master, Senior Zhang's ability to annihilate the Flying Shadow sect today, and ask the sect master to issue the sect master's order to form a life and death alliance with the Chinese sect." "Yes, I know." Fei Jun smiled and said, "I'll definitely pass on this message. Please rest assured, Deputy Hall Master Huang and Elder Yu. Go." Deputy Hall Master Huang waved his hand. After Fei Jun left, Huang Su's face was full of smiles. He said to Yu Zhuohong, "Elder Yu, the surprise you gave me today is really too much." Yu Zhuohong smiled bitterly and said, "Unfortunately, this is the only surprise I can give you. Senior Zhang has never mentioned the spiritual root cultivation method." "Haha, that's for sure." In order to comfort Yu Zhuohong, Huang Su had to say, "Because the Chanhe sect is really small. Senior Zhang cherishes the Chanhe sect, so he can't give the secret technique to the Chanhe sect. When my sect master comes over, Senior Zhang may give the secret technique to the fallen immortal sect. When the fallen immortal sect benefits from it, we won't neglect the Chanhe sect. I thank Deputy Hall Master Huang on behalf of my sect master." Yu Zhuohong smiled and bowed. "You're welcome, you're welcome." Huang Su hurriedly helped Yu Zhuohong up and said with a smile, "If the fallen immortal sect forms a life and death alliance with the Chinese sect, then our two sects will be a family. How can a family say a few words?" Hearing Huang Su say a family, Yu Zhuohong's heart skipped a beat. He understood that the so-called life and death alliance between two sects with similar strength could naturally be regarded as a real life and death alliance. If the fallen immortal sect and the Chanhe sect talked about a life and death alliance, it would be a joke. Rather than a life and death alliance, it would be more like being annexed. But even so, being a disciple of the fallen immortal sect might not be worse than being a disciple of the Chanhe sect, right? Xiao Huan naturally didn't know that the secret technique of selecting disciples had caused so many changes. He walked down from the sky and returned to the elapsed time hall. He waved his hand and took out the remaining jade slips and roughly looked through them. Similar to what Lu Hanhuan said, most of the records in the Chanhe sect were about the development of the Nebula Ridge and some things about the Fengyan Kingdom. The rest were about the cultivation methods and other things that the Chanhe sect had collected over the years. Xiao Hua was quite interested in the development of the Chanhe sect at first, but as he read, he became depressed. The Chanhe sect was just a small sect. No matter how many things it recorded, it would not be enough for a human Mahayana realm cultivator. Not only did Xiao Hua need to understand the Fengyan Kingdom, but he also needed to understand the Tsiupu Immortal Alliance, the Tao Alliance, and even the Heaven Alliance. It was impossible for Xiao Hua to see these things in the Chanhe sect. Alas, maybe it's time to leave. Xiao Hua withdrew his divine thought and put the last jade slip back into the corona. He pinched his chin and sighed slightly. Although I haven't recovered my divine sense, I can't waste my time on the Nebula Ridge. Now that I've eliminated the threat of the Flying Shadow sect for the Chanhe sect, I've returned the favor to the Chanhe sect. I'd better move first and use the teleportation formation to go to the Wuming Mountain Range. Even if I reach the border between the Tao Alliance and the Heaven Alliance, my divine sense is not enough to enter the Heaven Alliance. It's better than waiting here. Since he had made up his mind, Xiao Hua turned and walked out of the elapsed time hall. At this time, Lu Hanhuan was not waiting outside the hall. Only 2 Foundation establishment disciples were standing there respectfully. Seeing Xiao Hua come out, the 2 disciples hurriedly greeted him and said respectfully, "Senior, do you have any instructions?" "Well, please ask sect leader Lu to come here. I have something to ask him. Xiao Hua replied with a smile. The news that Xiao Hua killed the Flying Shadow sect with a long roar had been spread wildly among the disciples of the Chinese sect. The two disciples did not personally experience it because they were guarding the elapsed time hall. However, after hearing about Xiao Hua's deeds, they had long regarded Xiao Hua as a godlike existence. Now, they did not dare to neglect him. The two disciples exchanged glances, and one of them hurriedly replied, "Senior, please wait a moment. I'll send a message to our sect leader." After that, the disciple waved his hand and activated a yellow talisman. The yellow talisman gave birth to a flame in midair and turned into a fist-sized pigeon that flapped its wings and flew away. P.S. Fellow cultivators who like this book, please subscribe to it at the Chidian point. Vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, give it as a reward, and... Chapter 48-71. Oh, and Xiao Hua thought of something and said embarrassedly, "Please find Nuo Yeching." "Yes, senior." The other disciple smiled and said, "However, I don't have junior brother Nuo's communication talisman. I have to go out and send a message. Please wait for a moment." "Don't worry, quickly go." Xiao Hua's amiability was beyond the expectations of the two disciples. Sure enough, not long after, Lu Hanhuan flew over with a smile on his face. And when he saw Xiao Hua standing outside the hall, he hurriedly stepped forward and said, "Senior, if you have any errands, feel free to ask your disciples to send a message to me. You can just wait in the hall. Why wait here?" Seeing Lu Hanhuan in high spirits, Xiao Hua smiled and said, "Has the Flying Shadow sect been dealt with?" "I was just about to report this to Senior." Lu Hanhuan said respectfully, "Senior, please take a seat at the door. I will tell you everything." "And okay." Xiao Hua didn't know Lu Hanhuan too well. He thought for a moment and nodded. "This old man will listen to how you deal with the Flying Shadow sect." Lu Hanhuan respectfully invited Xiao Hua to take a seat at the head of the table. He stood below and carefully reported. He didn't dare to hide any details. Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes and listened carefully. He didn't say anything to interrupt. After Lu Hanhuan finished speaking, he looked at Xiao Hua nervously. He didn't know if what he did was right. Lu Hanhuan's actions were reasonable. After Xiao Hua returned to Xingyun Ridge, Lu Hanhuan led the disciples of the Chanhe sect to capture the injured disciples of the Flying Shadow sect, including the sect master Shihua. As for the disciples who escaped, Lu Hanhuan didn't chase after them. Instead, after cleaning up the mess, he sent Gao Cheng to lead the disciples to attack the Flying Shadow sect. This time, Yang Jiao Shiwu brought all the disciples of the Flying Shadow sect out. She thought that she had full confidence in winning. Other than an elder, there were no other disciples at the mountain gate of the Flying Shadow sect. If nothing went wrong, Gao Cheng should be able to win without a fight and bring the Flying Shadow sect into the sphere of influence of the Chinese sect. The reason why Lu Hanhuan felt uneasy was because he had listened to Huang Su's suggestion. After capturing Goathorn Shi Hua and the other elders of the Flying Shadow sect, he had crippled their cultivation to prevent future troubles. Although he did not take their lives, he was afraid that Xiao Hua would be unhappy. Who knew that after Xiao Hua heard this, he asked with interest, "In that case, are you planning to expand the Chinese sect?" "Yes." After Lu Hanhuan felt relieved, he immediately calmed down and became bolder. He nodded and said, "Previously, I was afraid of the fallen immortal sect. I was also afraid that the other sects would notice the Chinese sect. I was hesitant. But now that I've seen the fallen celestial sect, I think I can do a better job than the disciples of these reputable sects." "Oh, what are you going to do?" Xiao Hua raised his eyebrows and asked curiously. "I don't have any plans for the time being. After all, I didn't think too much about it before. Even now, I don't dare to speak nonsense in front of Senior." Lu Hanhuan smiled and said, "I only want to take down the Flying Shadow sect and support the elder of the Flying Shadow sect to be the sect master. Then, I want to invite Elder Gao Cheng to be the deputy sect master of the Flying Shadow sect, Seeing that Lu Hanhuan was getting more and more excited as he spoke, Xiao Hua laughed secretly. Lu Hanhuan's thinking was too simple. He was lacking in many areas. This was not only related to the Chanhe sect's seclusion, but also to Lu Hanhuan's character. Xiao Hua couldn't say much about this. After Lu Hanhuan finished speaking, Xiao Hua said, "Are you confident that you can do better than the disciples of the fallen immortal sect?" "Of course." Lu Hanhuan nodded resolutely and said, "I don't dare to say anything else. Just based on the actions of the disciples of the fallen immortal sect, I will definitely do better than them. I will definitely keep my promise, even if the other party is an elder of my sect." "Yes." Xiao Hua smiled and said, "I believe you can do it, but I want to tell you a story." Lu Hanhuan didn't understand, but he still said respectfully, "Senior, please tell me. I'm all ears." "When I was training in the past, I once went to a secular country. There were many corrupt officials in this country who lived a corrupt life of plundering the wealth of the people. Among the exploited commoners, there was a very insightful scholar. He saw that the commoners were living a difficult life, so he rose up and led the commoners to fight against those corrupt officials. He claimed that he wanted to overthrow these corrupt officials and divide the land equally between the rich and the poor. Because the commoners were oppressed by the corrupt officials and had no way to live, many commoners joined this scholar. This scholar and his subordinates were invincible. In the end, all the corrupt officials in this country were killed by this scholar and his subordinates." Xiao Hua opened his mouth and said, "And when this scholar and those commoners who followed him became officials and grasped power, in the beginning, they were still very honest and remembered the promise they made before they rose up. But in the end, they began to exploit other commoners, even more so than the corrupt officials from before." Xiao Hua's story was very short. In fact, it couldn't be considered a story. Lu Hanhuan listened and frowned. Although he didn't really understand what corrupt officials in what country, he already understood the meaning of Xiao Hua's story. He carefully said, "Senior, could it be that you think I can't do as well as a disciple of the fallen immortal sect?" Xiao Hua smiled and said, "It's not that I don't believe you. It's just that I think it's too difficult. From the perspective of a bystander, I always feel that the person involved is too shallow. It's really damaging the reputation of the famous sects. But if you really let me do it, sometimes I can't even do as well as the person involved. I also don't dare to ask you for more, as long as you can do something similar to that. Banished Emperor, I will be satisfied." "In the future?" Lu Hanhuan heard something from Xiao Hua's words and hurriedly asked, "Senior, are you leaving Xingyun Ridge?" "That's right." Xiao Hua nodded and said, "I'm not a disciple of the Chanhe sect. Naturally, I have to leave." "Where are you going, Senior?" Lu Hanhuan couldn't help but ask. Xiao Hua smiled and looked outside the hall and said, "Where I came from, I naturally have to go somewhere else. Senior, from Fengyin Kingdom to Wuming Mountain Range, we have to pass through many immortal alliances, and from the Tao Alliance to the Heaven Alliance, there's a gap that ordinary cultivators can't cross." Lu Hanhuan pleaded, "Senior, why don't you stay in Xingyun Ridge, wait for your magical power to recover before you leave?" "No." Xiao Hua shook his head. "I made up my mind. I called you here today to discuss two things with you." Lu Hanhuan knew that he couldn't keep Xiao Hua. Tears welled up his eyes, and he knelt on the ground and said, "Junior, thank you for your kindness, Senior. If it wasn't for you, how could I stand in front of you now? How could my Chanhe sect still exist in Xingyun Ridge? Not to mention two things. Even if it's 10 things or 100 things, I'll agree." "Get up." Xiao Hua helped Lu Hanhuan up and said, "The first thing is about the modified cultivation method. You have to think clearly, do you want it or not?" Lu Hanhuan got up. Seeing that Xiao Hua was so faithful to his promise, he was grateful in his heart. But at the same time, he felt embarrassed and replied, "Speaking of this, I have to report to you, Senior. When Elder Yu accompanied Huang Su to Xia Mountain Range that day, I didn't think it through and revealed the secret method of selecting spiritual roots to the fallen immortal sect first. Out of my expectation, the famous fallen immortal sect was actually troubled by the matter of selecting disciples. When Huang Su brought the jade slip back to the fallen immortal sect, he also guessed that you might have a suitable cultivation method for spiritual roots, and wanted to invite the head of the fallen immortal sect, Xian Xiaozi, to come to Xingyun Ridge and pay a visit to you personally. Oh, I understand. Xiao Hua's expression didn't change. Head Lu, you want the modified cultivation method, but you're afraid that the fallen immortal sect Xian Xiaozi would turn against you after taking the cultivation method? Lu Hanhuan blushed and nodded. Senior, what you said is really my intention. I'm really scared by the shamelessness of the fallen immortal sect's disciples. Not to that extent. Xiao Hua thought for a while and said, if I can modify the cultivation method, the head of the fallen immortal sect must also be able to modify the cultivation method. Moreover, the cultivation of disciples with spiritual roots isn't much different from the cultivation of ordinary disciples. The use of spiritual roots is only to select the disciples who are able to cultivate. Of course, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth is changing. I don't know whether the spiritual roots can be used for cultivation in the future. Moreover, although the actions of the fallen immortal sect's disciples were a little shameless, they weren't unreasonable, and Xian Xiaozi wouldn't be like Yang Jiao Shiwu, so you don't have to worry too much. Moreover, the rarer something is, the more valuable it is. If the fallen immortal sect wants to lay their hands on the Chanhe sect, they must be afraid that the secret skills and cultivation methods will be leaked. After I leave, I will definitely bid for these secret skills and cultivation methods at the places I pass by. When the Fengyan Kingdom has more of these items, the fallen immortal sect will naturally not have any evil intentions. After listening to Xiao Hua's explanation, Lu Hanhuan made a decision and replied, if that's the case, I have no choice but to take these modified cultivation methods. Otherwise, wouldn't I have offended Senior Xian Xiaozi if he comes and misses me? It's up to your own judgment. Xiao Hua said, anyway, I have an agreement with you. If you want it, I'll leave the cultivation method behind. Then I'll have to trouble you, Senior, to give me the cultivation method of those spiritual roots. Lu Hanhuan said and probed, Senior, can't you stay for a few more days? Can you wait until Xian Xiaozi comes before you leave? It's only about 10 days from the fallen immortal sect to here. It won't take up too much of your time. Sci-fi. Xiao Hua was the most soft-hearted. When he heard Lu Hanhuan's pleading, he thought that it would only take about 10 days. So he sighed and agreed. Then I'll stay in Xingyun Ridge for another month. However, I'll make it clear, if Xian Xiaozi doesn't come in a month, I'll definitely leave, and I won't wait for another day. P.S. Fellow cultivators who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, give a tip, and... Chapter 4872. Yes, thank you, Senior. Lu Hanhuan was overjoyed. He had already heard from Yu Zhuohong how important the spiritual root selection technique was to the fallen immortal sect. He also knew how important it was to Huang Su. He believed that after Xian Xiaozi obtained the spiritual root selection technique, he would definitely rush to Xingyun Ridge as soon as possible. All right, the first matter is settled. Let me tell you the second matter. Xiao Hua had just finished speaking when he looked outside the main hall and said, just in time, he's here. Her? Lu Hanhuan smiled, as though he had already guessed the meaning behind Xiao Hua's words. Although it was a rhetorical question, he had already confirmed it in his heart. However, when Lu Hanhuan saw Yeching, he quickly walked to the front of the hall and bowed respectfully. Disciple is here on Senior's orders. May I know what Senior has for me? You? Lu Hanhuan was confused and asked curiously, did Senior Zhang ask you to come here? Greetings, sect leader. Nua Yeching felt a little guilty and did not dare to face Lu Hanhuan directly. She said softly, disciple is indeed here on Senior's orders. Seeing that the disciple was Nua Yeching and not his previous Yuehua, Lu Hanhuan turned his head and said, Senior, the second matter, is actually related to Nua Yeching. Who do you think it is? Xiao Hua smiled and said, I have just come out of seclusion and am not familiar with the situation in the Yilin mainland. Since Nua Yeching is fated to be with me, I would like him to be my guide. Just treat it as, Xiao Hua originally wanted to say, just treat it as him going out to train. However, when the words reached his mouth, Xiao Hua felt that this reason was a little forced. His heart skipped a beat and he changed his words, just treat it as a test. If I feel that he is suitable, I will ask my disciples to accept him as their disciple. Not only was Lu Hanhuan shocked, even Nuo Yeching was so shocked that her mouth was agape. She felt that it was unbelievable. Quick! Lu Hanhuan reacted quickly and hurriedly waved his hand. Yeching, hurry up and thanks Senior Zhang. Yes, Junior thanks Senior. Nuo Yeching's brain couldn't react for a moment. It was just bringing her to the Wuming mountain range. Was it worth it for Xiao Hua to risk so much? Yeching. This old man only said that this disciple may accept you as a disciple. If your performance is not good, this old man will not open his mouth. Xiao Hua replied with a smile. Yes, I understand. Nuo Yeching finally understood that Xiao Hua was trying to make up an even more convincing reason. His heart was actually somewhat disappointed. Xiao Hua ignored Nuo Yeching's mood and said, this old man has just made an appointment with sect leader Lu to stay in Xingyun Ridge for another month or so. You should take advantage of this time to make some preparations. Of course, it's best to make a deal with the Chan sect. Who knows if you will perform well in the future? Yes, I know what to do. Disciple will take her leave now. Nuo Yeching bowed and left. Lu Hanhuan looked at Nuo Yeching's back and was really jealous of his luck. After Nuo Yeching left, Lu Hanhuan accompanied Xiao Hua for a few words and also hurriedly took his leave. After all, there were still a lot of things to deal with in the Flying Shadow sect. Now that Xiao Hua's attitude had already made it clear, Lu Hanhuan could let go of his hands and feet and do a big job. Out of Xiao Hua's and Lu Hanhuan's expectations, within 30 days, not only did the fallen immortal sect leader Xian Xiaozi not come, even Huang Su and the other Hall Masters did not come. Even the Life and Death Alliance that Huang Su had once mentioned did not come from the fallen immortal sect. Lu Hanhuan was frightened and somewhat regretful. He felt that he should have sent Yu Zhuohong and the others to accompany Huang Su back to the fallen immortal sect. Because as long as the fallen immortal sect's attitude was not clear, he would not be at ease. And Xiao Hua could not stay in Xingyun Ridge forever. Helplessly, Lu Hanhuan earnestly asked Xiao Hua to stay for a few more days while he sent Gao Cheng to the fallen immortal sect again to find out what the fallen immortal sect was thinking. In 30 days, Xiao Hua's physical body had constructed a lot more, and the seeds of the various avatars in his physical body had also filled up a lot. Xiao Hua could clearly sense that 9 extremely similar but slightly different laws of heaven and earth were thriving in his body. This kind of growth did not require Xiao Hua to carefully comprehend it. It was as if Xiao Hua himself was growing within the laws. Therefore, Xiao Hua was not particularly anxious. He agreed to Lu Hanhuan's request and continued to modify a few common cultivation techniques of the Chan He sect in the passage hall. There were generally a few types of modification of cultivation techniques. It could be modified according to the different physiques of the cultivator, or according to the different understanding of the cultivator, or according to the difference in the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Most ordinary cultivators could do the first 2 types. Obviously, Xiao Hua was modifying the 3rd type. If it was before, when Xiao Hua was in the 3 continents, even if he was already at the Mahayana stage of the human race, even if he had the magical powers of Buddhism, Taoism, Confucianism, demon, and other sects, it would be difficult for him to modify this cultivation technique to adapt to the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. But now, Xiao Hua had experienced the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the 10,000 demon realm and the laws of heaven and earth in the immature space. At this time, he had entrusted his primordial spirit to the laws of heaven and earth, and condensed his body and many of his avatars with the laws of heaven and earth. In his eyes, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the Yilin continent, Dawn Rain continent, 10,000 demon realm, hidden immortal continent, 1,000 demons sacred realm, and the Pure Land world had gradually revealed their essence. He could clearly see the source of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, and also vaguely understood the reason for the change in cultivation due to the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Therefore, he had a unique advantage in modifying cultivation techniques. It's very simple. If you want to modify cultivation techniques, you must first understand why the spiritual energy of heaven and earth changed. Xiaohua was sitting in the elapsing palace and said something to Nuo Yeching. Beside Nuo Yeching, Yuhua and Lu Qingyu listened carefully without blinking. Although I don't know where the spiritual energy of heaven and earth changed, I know that it must be because of the spatial crack, which caused the spiritual energy of heaven and earth from other realms to flow into the Yilan continent. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth is completely different from the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in our continent, which caused the change. Of course, whether it's the cultivators of the Heaven Alliance or the Tao Alliance, they must have guessed this. In these hundreds of years, they must have searched the entire Yilan continent to find where the spatial crack is. This requires a lot of manpower, and I'm afraid only these two giants can do it. Your cultivation is still shallow now, so you must not know that there are other realms outside of the Yilan continent. Let's not talk about anything else. I only know of the 10,000 demon realm. That's a realm filled with demon spirits, and there are no humans. Xiaohua thought for a while and explained, the realm that leaked the spiritual qi of heaven and earth into our Yilan continent should be similar to the 10,000 demon realm. This is because under the changes in the spiritual qi of heaven and earth, all the demon beasts on the Yilan continent have become much stronger, and all the human cultivators with the true spirit bloodline have also become much stronger. This is also the reason why the previously unknown Flying Shadow sect suddenly rose up and became so ambitious. Speaking of this, Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. This was because, according to the Swift Cherry Supreme Sage and the others, in the vicinity of the Tao Heaven world, other than the 10,000 demon realm, there was also the Dark Spirit realm. The spiritual qi of heaven and earth in the Dark Spirit realm was the nightmare of the demon beasts in the 10,000 demon realm. Perhaps the changes in the spiritual qi of heaven and earth in the Yilan continent and Xiaoyu continent were caused by the Dark Spirit realm. Of course, this thought flashed through Xiaohua's mind. This was because he did not have the time to go to the Dark Spirit realm to verify it, nor did he have the time to search for the spatial crack between the Dark Spirit realm and the Yilan continent. Senior, Nuo Yeching asked thoughtfully, if that's the case, shouldn't we use the true spirit bloodlines cultivation method to modify our cultivation method? Xiaohua nodded and said, that's right. That's right. However, it is only a reference, because it is said that these descendants of the true spirit bloodline seem to be unable to escape the influence of the spiritual qi in addition to the rapid advancement of their spiritual power. This old man has to consider from another perspective. Body cultivator? Yuhua probed. This junior heard that some body cultivators are not very sensitive to the changes in the spiritual qi of heaven and earth. Not bad, not bad. Xiaohua looked at Yuhua in surprise and clapped his hands. Fairy Yu, your comprehension is not bad. This old man didn't expect that you would know that body cultivators are not sensitive to the changes in the spiritual qi of heaven and earth, even though your Chana's sect doesn't have any body cultivators. Yuhua blushed slightly and said embarrassedly, Senior, I'm a golden core cultivator after all. Because of the lightning tribulation of nascent soul cultivators, I've put in a lot of hard work. During my travels, I listened to the experiences of many nascent soul cultivators who had undergone the lightning tribulation. That's right. Xiaohua nodded and said, however, if we only focus on body cultivators, I'm afraid we won't be able to eradicate the effects of the spiritual qi of heaven and earth. We need to focus on the bloodline cultivation method. Bloodline cultivation method? Nuo Yeching was shocked and blurted out, could it be that Senior Zhang is also proficient in the bloodline cultivation method? I'm not proficient. This old man knows a little, Xiaohua said with a smile. This old man modified your Chanha's sex cultivation method by combining the bloodline cultivation method and body cultivation method. Heavens! Lu Qingyu was a little confused. He said in a low voice, now that Senior said this junior understands a little. It turns out that modifying a cultivation method is so complicated. No wonder the seniors of Chu Pu Immortal Alliance still don't have a solution. Senior's modification. I'm afraid you've already eliminated the effects of the changes in the spiritual qi of heaven and earth? Nuo Yeching sighed and asked in a low voice, Senior's actions are immeasurable. How can it be so simple? Xiao Hua shook his head. The low-level cultivation method has been modified, but it still needs to be tested. Then it needs to be modified again. As for the high-level cultivation method, it's not so easy to modify. Without hundreds or thousands of years, it's impossible to make any progress. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a month, vote for a recommendation, collect, reward, and thank all forms of support. Chapter 48-73. Yuehua and Lu Qingyu looked at each other bitterly. They knew that even if Xiao Hua started to modify the cultivation technique now, they wouldn't be able to catch up. Then Yuehua looked at Xiao Hua and asked tentatively, Then, Senior, we are about to reach the late stage of the Golden Core realm. Do you have any method to pass the lightning tribulation? Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. He thought for a moment and said, I don't know how powerful the lightning tribulation is. However, I think that if you can refine the Pleiades demon-devouring immortal array that I gave you, you should be able to block most of the lightning tribulation. Yuehua was overjoyed. However, she was still worried and asked, Then, if I can refine the entire Pleiades demon-devouring immortal array, will I be able to block all of the lightning tribulation? Xiao Hua shrugged. He understood what Yuehua meant. He smiled and said, I don't dare to guarantee this. However, I can be sure that if I give you the array flag of the Pleiades demon-devouring immortal array, you won't be able to live long enough to refine it. A man's wealth is his own ruin. Yes, Senior, you're right. I was too greedy. Yuehua blushed and lowered her head. Next to him, Lu Qingyu asked, Senior, why do you think late gold core stage cultivators like us have to face a thunder tribulation when we step into the nascent soul stage? Xiao Hua thought for a moment and replied, The change in the spiritual energy of heaven and earth has a process of change. It starts with a change in quantity, which may cause the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to change in the Yi-Lin continent. When the quantity reaches a certain level, it may cause the laws of heaven and earth to change. This is because the spiritual energy of heaven and earth is targeted at demonic spirits. When demonic spirits want to condense their bodies, they will face the lightning tribulation. When human cultivators reach the nascent soul realm, can't they also reform their bodies? Isn't it similar to demonic spirits and demonic beasts? In that case, the birth of the lightning tribulation was only logical. What's more, the formation of a nascent soul is when the laws of heaven and earth enter the body, which is the birth of a spirit body. When the laws of heaven and earth change, it naturally has to engrave new laws in the spirit body, so it's natural for the lightning tribulation to occur. Xiao Hua's explanation was based on the understanding of the Mahayana stage of the human race. Yu Hua and Lu Qingyu were a little confused, but Nuo Yeching's eyes flashed with clear light, and she asked, Senior, if this is the explanation for the lightning tribulation of the nascent soul stage and body condensation stage, then why would the lifespan of the divinity branching stage, void refinement stage, and other seniors when they use their magic power? Does Senior know? Oh, Xiao Hua was stunned. He looked at this mere foundation establishment disciple and asked curiously, How do you know all this? Nuo Yeching was also surprised and said, Senior, didn't you say so yourself in front of the Nebula Ridge? He seemed to be asking about Deputy Hall Master Huang of the Fallen Immortal Sect. Furthermore, this junior has heard Elder Pang and the others mention it before. Haha, that's true. You little fellow, Your ears are quite sharp. Xiaohua thought for a moment and said with a smile, "It's best that you don't know about this at your current cultivation level. Otherwise, it will affect your Dao heart." "Yes, this junior understands," Nuo Yeching said with a smile. "This junior is just curious. I wonder if senior can explain it to me?" Xiaohua looked at Nuo Yeching with interest. After thinking for a moment, he nodded and said, "This matter seems very mysterious, but it's also very simple to explain. Let me ask you, how do you use the magic art now?" Nuo Yeching was puzzled and asked curiously, "This junior doesn't understand what senior means. Using the magic art. Isn't it using the magic art with the hand to activate the magic power and use the magic power?" "Yes, when you activate the magic power, is it the true essence in your body? If you cultivate qi, is it the true essence in your body?" Xiaohua said and looked at Yu Hua and Lu Qingyu. "You are a gold core cultivator, so you naturally activate the true essence in your gold core. If you're a nascent soul cultivator, you naturally activate the true essence in your gold core, right?" "Yes, this principle. All Taoist cultivators should understand, right?" Lu Qingyu didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he replied, "Of course they understand." Xiaohua narrowed his eyes and said with a smile, "Because the cultivation of Taoist cultivators is based on the spiritual qi of heaven and earth. And no matter what realm a cultivator is in, when he activates the magic power, he has to rely on the spiritual qi of heaven and earth. Since the spiritual qi of heaven and earth changes, activating the magic power will naturally affect the cultivator. Senior, the question is, why will it affect the lifespan?" Lu Qingyu was eager to know the reason and asked. "Okay." Xiaohua ignored Lu Qingyu and said to Yu Hua, "Fairy Yu, if you activate the magic art that consumes a lot of magic power, or if you use the magic art that only nascent soul cultivators can use, what will the consequences be? Naturally, it will be the backlash of the magic power. If it's light, the meridians will be broken, and if it's heavy, the gold core will be shattered." Yu Hua answered without hesitation. "But if your meridians are tougher and your gold core is several times bigger?" Xiaohua asked. "Of course it's possible," Yu Hua said in confusion. "But Junior's meridians can only be tempered to this extent, and my gold core can only be that big. Yes, you can only do this much." Xiaohua said in simple words, "The reason is that your physical body is not strong enough. This old man has seen cultivators who have tempered their physical bodies. Their meridians are several times stronger than ordinary people, and their gold core is also twice as strong as ordinary people." It's the physical body again. Lu Qingyu, Yu Hua, and Nuo Yeching heard this and couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. They all understood. The same spiritual qi of heaven and earth, the same physical body, the same magic art. Comparing the spiritual qi of heaven and earth in the Yilan continent to the mutated spiritual qi of heaven and earth in other realms. Which one do you think has a greater backlash? Xiaohua asked Nuo Yeching. Nuo Yeching answered without hesitation. Naturally, it's the mutated spiritual qi of heaven and earth. Because this spiritual qi of heaven and earth is controlled by demonic beasts, and demonic beasts' physical bodies are much stronger than humans. Then this old man will ask you again, why do you have a much longer lifespan than ordinary people? Xiaohua asked again. Yu Hua answered, naturally, it's because we can seize the good fortune of heaven and earth, draw spiritual qi into our bodies, and cleanse our impurities. Our physical bodies are already completely different from ordinary people. That's right. Since we can use the spiritual qi of heaven and earth to temper our bodies and seize the good fortune of heaven and earth to obtain a longer lifespan, then why don't we consume our lifespan when we use magic arts? Xiaohua continued, all Dao sect magic arts will not only cause a backlash to the meridians and physical body, they can also reduce our lifespan. It's just that the amount of lifespan you lost previously was very small, so you couldn't sense it at all. But now, the spiritual qi of heaven and earth has changed. When you use magic arts, the amount of lifespan you lose is obviously much greater, and only now did you notice it. Or rather, the amount of lifespan you lose by using this kind of mutated spiritual chi of heaven and earth should be the lifespan of demonic beasts, and not the lifespan of humans. Because the lifespan of demonic beasts far exceeds that of humans. So humans are unable to bear the burden. Then Senior's modification of the cultivation method not only mixed in body cultivation, but also some bloodline technique. Could it be that this bloodline technique has something to do with lifespan? Newell, Yeching asked, hitting the nail on the head. Xiao Hua shook his head slightly. This is all this old man's guess. Before the cultivation method is tested, this old man can't be sure. AI, Senior's knowledge is like that of a celestial being. Although this junior understands, thinking about it carefully, there's still many details that I don't understand. Yu Hua sighed. But this junior also understands that if Senior modifies this cultivation method, our Dao sect cultivators should be able to walk a path to heaven under the changes of heaven and earth. That's right. Modifying the cultivation method should be the only way for us Yilin continent cultivators to survive. Lu Qingyu agreed. No. Xiao Hua looked outside the hall and shook his head. Modifying the cultivation method is not the only way. There's an even simpler way. Senior, Yu Hua exclaimed. There's another way to survive? Senior, can you tell us? There's another way, which is to go to other realms. Xiao Hua withdrew his gaze. As long as we go to other realms, wouldn't we not be disturbed by the Yilin continent's heaven and earth spiritual chi? However, Xiao Hua sighed again at this point. It's a pity that although this path is simple, it's also extremely difficult. Even our Dao sect's Grand Ascension stage cultivators wouldn't be able to easily cross realms, not to mention the tens of millions of other Dao sect disciples. If Grand Ascension stage cultivators can't do it, we can ask Tribulation Transcendent stage cultivators to help us. Nuo, Yeching smiled. Rather than perishing during Tribulation Transcendence like the fallen celestial sect spiritual master Huang Qiong, it's better to take the risk and go to other realms. Tribulation Transcendence stage cultivators? Xiao Hua was stunned for a moment before coming to a realization. On the Dawn-Rain continent and the Yilin continent, the peak of Dao sect cultivation was Tribulation Transcendent stage. This was slightly different from the other three continents. The Tribulation Transcendent stage cultivators that Nuo Yeching was referring to were naturally Grand Ascension stage cultivators like Xiao Hua. The passageways between realms are usually formed by heaven and can't be created by humans. Xiao Hua pondered for a moment before explaining. Moreover, the laws of heaven and earth in different realms are different. Even Tribulation Transcendent stage cultivators wouldn't be able to withstand the transformation of the laws of heaven and earth. So how can ordinary cultivators succeed? No, Yeching was disappointed, and she whispered, Is there really no hope? I don't have a way for the time being. Xiao Hua spoke the truth. I can only try my best to do what I can. Senior, Nuo Yeching saw that Xiao Hua was treating them well, and she stole a glance at Yue Hua and Lu Qingyu before asking in a low voice, Senior, can you accept my master and martial Aunt Yue Hua as your disciples? Yue Hua and Lu Qingyu's bodies trembled when they heard Nuo Yeching's words, and they looked at Xiao Hua with longing in their eyes. Xiao Hua was a little hesitant. If it was before, there was no need to say anything. Although Yue Hua and Lu Qingyu's cultivation were lower, Xiao Hua only needed to use the Kunlun mirror to take them in, and then let the other Fortune Gate disciples take them in as their disciples. However, the situation was different now. Xiao Hua couldn't absorb them into his space, and it was already troublesome for him to leave with Nuo Yeching. Now that he had to bring 2 golden core realm cultivators with him, wouldn't it be even more troublesome? This was what ordinary Dao sect cultivators meant when they said that they had no fate. P.S. Fellow Daoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, give a recommendation vote, collect it, and give it a tip. Chapter 48-74. Both of you are too weak. I can't accept you as my disciples. Xiao Hua said bluntly. Both of you are the best disciples in the Chinese sect. If I take both of you away, won't Lu Hanhuan be angry? Yue Hua and Lu Qingyu were disappointed. They said softly, we are just wishful thinking. Sorry for making things difficult for you. After that, Nuo Yeqing made an excuse to say goodbye to her master. The three of them got up and left. Sigh. I can only say that we are not fated. Xiao Hua looked at the three of them, leaving, and sighed. He inserted his divine thought into the empty jade slip and continued to modify the cultivation method of the golden core. 10 days later, Lu Hanhuan finally brought Gao Cheng to the Hall of Time again. However, looking at Gao Cheng's gloomy face, Xiao Huan knew that something had gone wrong. Sure enough, Gao Cheng bowed and said, Senior, I went to the Fallen Immortals sect this time. I didn't see Shun Jun and the others, nor did I see Deputy Hall Chief Huang. Oh, where did they go? Didn't the Fallen Immortals sect tell you? Xiao Hua asked curiously. Gao Cheng smiled bitterly and said, Senior, you think too highly of the disciples of the Fallen Immortal sect. They claim to be a famous sect and have always been arrogant. They don't even see the shadow of the Chan-He sect in their eyes. Last time, I was fooled by Shun Jun and the others. This time, they didn't even have the mood to fool me. They didn't even want to see me. Xiao Huan knew that the Fallen Immortal sect might not be as bad as Gao Cheng said. Gao Cheng said this because he was angry. This was all from Gao Cheng's point of view. Therefore, he thought for a while and said with a smile, I don't believe that you came back empty-handed. Gao Cheng nodded and said, Yes, I was ordered by the sect leader to find out the exact information. Otherwise, I wouldn't dare to come back so easily. That's enough. Hurry up and say it. Lu Hanhuan, who was beside him, also had a displeased look on his face as he urged. I waited for many days near the Fallen Immortal sect, and finally met a disciple who was alone. Gao Cheng continued, so I followed this disciple to a place forbidding and deliberately got close to him. Later on, I found out that after Deputy Hall Master Huang returned to the Fallen Immortal sect, he did not stay and left immediately. As for Zhijun and the other disciples, he did not know. But according to him, there were some urgent matters happening in Chupu Immortal Alliance recently. The leader of Fallen Immortal sect, Xian Shao Zi, did not seem to be in Fallen Immortal sect. In my opinion, Vice Hall Master Huang, has he gone to look for Senior Xian Shao Zi? As he said, Gao Cheng looked at Lu Hanhuan. Lu Hanhuan nodded his head and said to Gao Cheng, Senior, this junior thinks so too. After all, the spiritual root selection secret skill was too important. It was impossible for the Fallen Immortal sect to ignore it. It's only because Senior Xian Shao Zi isn't in the sect that Vice Hall Master Huang doesn't dare to act on his own. Perhaps so. Xiao Hua thought for a moment before replying. However, this old man wants to ask, where is the Chupu Immortal Alliance? When will Huang Su return? Lu Hanhuan said bitterly, the Chupu Immortal Alliance is formed by the cultivation sects and clans of our Fengyan country, Yu country, Danshao country, and 18 other countries. It doesn't have a fixed location. This time, who knows where Senior Xian Shao Zi went? So, we also don't know when Huang Su will return. Could it be more than a year? Xiao Hua sighed and asked. Lu Hanhuan did not dare to hide the truth and nodded his head slightly, although he did not know where Xian Shao Zi went. Then this old man can't wait any longer. Xiao Hua stood up and said, this old man will prepare to leave Xingyun Ridge now. Yes, this junior understands. This junior will send senior off now. Although Lu Hanhuan was unwilling, he did not dare to say anything more and could only comply with Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua smiled and said, Sect Leader Lu, don't worry. Aren't you worried about the spiritual root selection secret skill and the modified basic cultivation techniques? After this old man leaves, I will slowly make these secret skills and cultivation techniques public. The more spiritual root selection secret skill there are in Yilin mainland, the less danger your Chan-He sect will face, right? Anyway, your Chan-He sect has already taken the lead. This opportunity has already been secured. Of course, Lu Hanhuan did not like Xiao Hua announcing the secret skills and cultivation techniques so early. However, after thinking about the danger of his sect being exterminated, he forced a smile and said, "Thank you for your trouble, Senior. This junior does not need to worry." At this point, Lu Hanhuan thought of something and hurriedly said, "Senior, please wait a moment. Although my Chanhe sect is a small sect, our disciples have received many benefit from Senior. This junior has some gifts for Senior. I hope Senior will kindly accept them." All right." Xiao Hua smiled and followed Lu Hanhuan out of the Hall of Passing. Who knew that outside the hall, other than Nuo Yeqing, Yu Hua and Lu Qingyu were also standing there with smiles on their faces. Xiao Hua's gaze swept across them and immediately understood something. Sure enough, Lu Hanhuan smiled and said, "Senior is traveling far away with Nuo Yeqing, who is in Foundation establishment. This junior was afraid that it would be inconvenient for Senior on the way, so asked Yu Hua and Lu Qingyu to send Senior off. If Senior feels that the two of them are serving you well, there is no need to send them back." Xiao Hua looked at Nuo Yeqing, and Nuo Yeqing shook her head slightly. Xiao Hua knew that this matter was not his doing. However, when Xiao Hua looked at Lu Qingyu's eyes actually flickered. On the other hand, Yu Hua's face was filled with excitement, and her eyes were clear. Since that was the case, Xiao Hua did not refuse too much and said with a smile, "Then this old man thanks sect leader Lu. I don't dare. Compared to Senior's generous gift, what Junior has done is really insignificant." Lu Hanhuan hurriedly said respectfully. Subsequently, the two elders, Yu Zhuohong and Peng Lusheng, came over and accompanied Xiao Hua to say a few words. Only then did they send Xiao Hua out of Xingyun Ridge. In order to not attract the attention of people with ulterior motives and maintain a kind of deterrence, Lu Hanhuan did not send all the disciples to send Xiao Hua off. Only these few cultivators quietly accompanied Xiao Hua out of Chanhe sect. After Xiao Hua waved goodbye to Lu Hanhuan and his figure landed on the flying boat controlled by Lu Qingyu and left, Lu Hanhuan let out a long sigh and sighed. Senior Zhang is really an upright senior expert. This is the first time I have seen someone like him in my life. It's a pity that we can't keep him in Xingyun Ridge. Once he leaves, who knows when we will see him again. Yu Zhuohong also lamented, "Sigh, that's right. If our Chanhe sect has Senior Zhang in charge, why would we be afraid of the fallen immortal sect?" "Elder Yu, you think too much," Gao Cheng said faintly. "Not to mention a small sect like our Chanhe sect, even the fallen immortal sect. I'm afraid it can't accommodate a great god like Senior Zhang. If he is not a Mahayana cultivator, then he is a tribulation stage cultivator. We are already lucky to have the opportunity to form a relationship with our Chanhe sect this time." Tribulation stage cultivator? Lu Hanhuan was shocked and said, "I think it's already amazing that Senior Zhang is a Mahayana cultivator. Ever since spiritual master Huang Qiong failed to pass the tribulation in the famous fallen immortal sect, there's been no tribulation stage cultivator in the sect. How could Senior Zhang be a tribulation stage cultivator?" Sect leader Lu, "We're just frogs at the bottom of the well." Gao Cheng smiled bitterly and said, "Do you know about the 10,000 demon realm, the realm power, and the laws of heaven and earth?" Lu Hanhuan was dumbfounded. He shook his head and said, "What are these? How would I know?" Then Lu Hanhuan was shocked again and asked, "Could it be that Senior Zhang told you?" "It was not Senior Zhang who told me. It was Senior Zhang who told Lu Qingyu," Gao Cheng said in a low voice. Not to mention the guesses of the people of Chanhe sect, Lu Qingyu drove the flying boat and flew for more than 100 miles. He turned his head and looked at the gradually blurred Xingyun Ridge and said with emotion, "Ever since I joined Chanhe sect, I have never thought that I would leave Chanhe sect one day." Nuo Yeqing smiled and said, "Master, you are lucky." If sect leader Lu was not embarrassed to let Martial Uncle Yu serve Senior Zhang alone, how could you follow Senior Zhang? Yuehua heard and blushed. She rebuked, "Yeqing, how could you say this in front of Senior Zhang? Senior sister Yu, you drive the flying boat first." Lu Qingyu said, Okay, Yuehua was in a good mood and replaced Lu Qingyu to drive the flying boat. Lu Qingyu knelt in front of Xiaohua and said, Senior Zhang, this is my own decision. Please forgive me. Oh, Xiaohua was stunned. He already knew that this was Lu Qingyu's doing, but he did not expect Lu Qingyu to confess to him as soon as he left the sect. Since I have agreed, I will not blame you for this. Xiaohua raised his hand and said, It is human nature for people to walk to higher places and water to flow to lower places. I can understand your desire to pursue the Tao. Previously, I felt that I was not fated with you. Since you have worked hard, this fate has become fate. Get up. Junior brother Lu. Yuehua looked at everything in front of her in surprise and whispered, Could it be that this was not arranged by sect leader? I won't hide it from senior sister. Lu Qingyu put down the worry in his heart and replied with a smile on his face. Sect leader had this intention, but he was afraid that Senior Zhang would be unhappy. Since I want to stay by Senior Zhang's side and serve him, I borrowed Elder Gao's words to encourage sect leader Lu. Of course, if it were not for senior sister Yu, I would never be able to leave Xingyun Ridge. Master, Nuo Yeching did not know whether to laugh or cry. You are too calculative. Damn it. How can I be more calculative than you? Lu Qingyu said, How many times have I told you that the road to Wuming Mountain Range is very dangerous? But you didn't listen. When you saw Senior Zhang, you desperately told him that if you can leave Xingyun Ridge, why can't I? Do you know how jealous I was of you when I found out that you could follow Senior Zhang? Master, didn't I also put in a good word for you in front of Senior Zhang? Nuo Yeching said with a smile. Yuehua was shocked at first, but then she saw that Xiaohua did not seem to care. She sighed and said gratefully, Junior brother Lu, if that is the case, senior sister also has to thank you. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, give it a reward, and thank you for all forms of support. Chapter 4875. You don't have to thank me. Lu Qingyu waved his hand and said, Now that Senior Zhang is traveling alone in the Yilin continent, we just need to serve him well. Don't you think so? Lu Qingyu's last sentence was directed at Xiaohua. Xiaohua looked at the three people and smiled in his heart. After all, there was still a long way to go to the Wuming mountain range. It was better to have someone to accompany him than to talk to himself. Senior, now that we have left the Xingyun Ridge, where should we go? Seeing that Xiaohua did not answer Lu Qingyu, Nuo Yeching hurriedly changed the topic and asked. Xiaohua thought for a moment and took out Yu Zhuohong's jade slip. He threw it to Lu Qingyu and said, This is the route to the Heavenly Alliance. Take a look and bring me there. Yes, Senior. Lu Qingyu took the jade slip and said as he looked at it. However, after looking at it for a moment, he smiled bitterly and said, Senior, do you have any crystals with you? Xiaohua waved his hand and said, When I came out of seclusion, weren't you there? I didn't even have any clothes on me. How could I have crystals? Yuhua's face was slightly red, as if she thought of something and unconsciously laughed. Then we'll have to trouble you. Lu Qingyu shrugged and said, When sect leader Lu asked me to serve you, he also gave me a few storage rings, but there were not many crystals in them. We need to use the transmission array on the jade slip. So these crystals are far from enough. If we fly there directly, not to mention that it's not easy for us to pass through some of the natural barriers, just the time, I'm afraid it'll take us at least 100 years. Isn't that simple? Let's go directly to the Xiehong Mountain Auction House. Xiaohua smiled and said, I never thought that the Chinese sect could give me enough crystals. Okay. Yuhua heard and said sweetly, Senior, please sit tight. I'll send you to the Xiehong Mountain Auction House. Not to mention Xiaohua going to the Xiehong Mountain Auction House, just the fallen immortal sect. Although Xiaohua knew that the secret technique for selecting spiritual roots was important, he did not expect that the moment this secret technique was revealed, it would cause such a huge uproar in the Yilin continent. While Xiaohua was explaining to Yeching about the effects of the changes in the world's spiritual energy in the passage hall in Nebula Ridge, A flying boat was flying towards the southeast, an unknown distance away from Nebula Ridge. On the flying boat, apart from the several mid-spirit severing stage cultivators standing on the edge, there was Huang Su and another thin old man standing at the center of the flying boat with an anxious expression. This old man's cultivation was about the late stage of the spirit severing stage. He was wearing a treasured green robe. His hands, which were hidden in his sleeves, were faintly shining with a layer of pale golden light. When the old man saw the anxiety on Huang Su's face, he couldn't help but laugh. "Vice Hall Master Huang, why are you so anxious? In half a day's time, we will reach River Origin City. There is a teleportation array there. My Strength Hall's disciples are waiting beside the teleportation array. With them leading the way, we will be able to find the sect master without much effort." Yes, yes. Facing this old man, Huang Su did not dare to be negligent. Although he did not hide the anxiety on his face, he still forced a smile and replied, "This junior knows that with Hall Master you personally sending us off, as well as the senior brother from the Strength Hall, there will be no accidents. But this junior still feels that something is wrong. I am afraid that if we are late, we will delay this important matter that concerns the future of our fallen immortal sect." Oh, Hall Master Yu's expression changed. He looked at Huang Su and asked curiously, "Vice Hall Master Huang, this old man knows that I should not ask too much. But that Hall Master Wang Qi personally brought you to find this old man. He wanted my Strength Hall's most loyal disciple to protect you and ensure that you will be sent to the sect master's side. This old man is very surprised. I don't know what your Jingzheng Hall discovered that you insisted on meeting the sect master when he is heading to Chupu Immortal Alliance for the Immortal Alliance Conference. This is why this old man personally came to send you to River Origin City. You must know that other than sending Alliance Master one off previously, I did not even send the sect master off to the Immortal Alliance this time." At this point, Hall Master Yu did not say anything else, nor did he say what he wanted to ask. But how could Huang Su not understand what Hall Master Yu wanted to know? Huang Su could not help but complain secretly in his heart. He knew that since Hall Master Yu was curious, there would definitely be a nod in his heart. If he didn't say anything, he would definitely offend him. But if he did say something, thinking about the 10 nascent soul disciples who suddenly disappeared, Huang Su's heart would be afraid. After thinking for a moment, Huang Su whispered, "Hall Master Yu, this matter, this junior will only tell you. You must keep it a secret." "Of course. Don't worry. I will definitely not tell anyone else." Hall Master Yu almost patted his chest to assure Huang Su. "It's like this, Hall Master Yu. Do you still remember the only person in the fallen immortal sect who could possibly reach the tribulation stage?" Huang Su asked mysteriously. Hall Master Yu was stunned for a moment. Then, a yearning expression appeared on his face, and he said in a reminiscing tone, "Of course I know. Back then, when Huang Qiong was guarding the fallen immortal sect, how glorious was our fallen immortal sect. When the Alliance Master of Chupu Immortal Alliance passed by the Fengyan Kingdom, he had to come to our fallen immortal sect to meet him. At that time, not only did the Fengyan Kingdom respect our fallen immortal sect, but also the neighboring kingdoms who dared to go against us. Sigh. It's a pity that ever since Huang Qiong failed to pass the tribulation stage, our fallen immortal sect's power fell drastically. Today, our sect master has to travel thousands of miles to attend the Immortal Alliance Conference. At this point, Hall Master Yu stopped and said in surprise, "What? Don't tell me you found out." "Hee, that's right," Huang Su said in a low voice. Hall Master Yu's guess is right. I found out. Somewhere in the Fengyan Kingdom where Huang Qiong was undergoing the tribulation stage. How is that possible? Hall Master Yu was even more incredulous. He shook his head and said, "When Huang Qiong failed to pass the tribulation stage, our sect master ordered us to search the entire Fengyan Kingdom and find out where Huang Qiong was undergoing the tribulation stage. Even though I can't say that I've explored every inch of the Fengyan Kingdom, I've been to most of the places. Even after we searched the entire Fengyan Kingdom, Our sect master's personal guards didn't find out where Huang Qiong was undergoing the tribulation stage. Huang Su chuckled before he asked in a low voice, Home Master you, let me ask you a question. If Royal Dome's spiritual master set up the heavenly cycle devil subduing star formation, would you be able to detect the traces of it? Of course. Hall Master you replied without hesitation. Even our sect master wouldn't be able to find it, let alone me. So, Huang Su said proudly, although our fallen immortal sect searched the entire Fengyan kingdom, we still couldn't find out where Huang Qiong was undergoing the tribulation stage. What are you talking about? Hall Master you said unhappily. I've already thought about this situation. Huang Qiong must have set up the heavenly demon subduing star formation to resist the tribulation stage. However, the heavenly demon subduing star formation couldn't be in perfect condition. Moreover, Huang Qiong had failed the tribulation stage, and the formation was broken. How could it still be in perfect condition? However, when I went to check it out, most of the heavenly demon subduing star formation was in perfect condition. There were only a few traces of the tribulation stage. Huang Su said with a shrug. Hall Master Yu was even more puzzled. He frowned and said, could it be that Huang Qiong passed away before the tribulation stage? Damn it, that must be it. It must be those old farts from the Autumn Immortal Alliance. They knew that Huang Qiong was about to undergo the tribulation stage, so they launched a sneak attack. Huang Su thought for a while and said softly, I'm afraid Hall Master Yu has guessed wrongly. When I saw Huang Qiong's remains, there were indeed traces of the tribulation stage. Could it be that Huang Qiong was struck by the tribulation stage before he could activate the heavenly demon subduing star formation? Hall Master Yu was dumbfounded. This seems to be different from the tribulation stage in the legends. Huang Su said with a smile, I don't know what the real tribulation stage is like. I'm afraid we'll have to report this to our sect master. That's true. Hall Master Yu nodded. Although there are a few elders in the fallen immortal sect who have reached the Mayana stage, our sect master is the most knowledgeable about the tribulation stage. This matter is more important to him. Hall Master Yu was puzzled. He looked at Huang Su and said, That's not right. Huang Su, Huang Qiong's remains and the heavenly demon subduing star formation are important. However, there are still a few elders in the sect. There's no need for you to rush to the meeting of the Immortal Alliance to claim credit, right? If that's the case, does Wang Qi still have the right to be the Hall Master of Jingjing Hall? Huang Su saw that he could not appease Hall Master Yu. He looked around and said, Hall Master Yu, you're really observant. If it was just Huang Qiong's remains, I wouldn't be so anxious. However, when I went to look for the remains of the Royal Dome Enlightened Master, something strange happened, and it alerted me. What happened? Hall Master Yu's curiosity was piqued. I'm not heading there for Royal Dome Enlightened Master's remains. I went there for something else. However, on my way there, I met Jejun, Fan Di, and the other disciples of Conscian Hall. They heard the news and wanted to claim credit. They didn't inform the Hall Master of Conscian Hall. Instead, they went there together. When I heard about it, I reprimanded them for being so bold. I sent Jejun and the other disciples back to the sect immediately while I went there with the other disciples. Huang Su explained, however, when I returned to the sect after retrieving the heavenly cycle devil subduing star formation's flag, Royal Dome Enlightened Master's corpse, and his belongings, I discovered that exiled king and the others hadn't returned. You can. Chapter 4876. How could that be? Hall Chief, you did not seem to recognize Banished King and the rest. However, he was still shocked when he heard the news. Could it be that they met with an accident? There must have been an accident. Huang Su nodded affirmatively. After this junior reported this matter to the Hall Master, he immediately sent a disciple to invite Hall Master Yu of Conscian Hall over. At the same time, he sent a large number of disciples back to search for the whereabouts of Banished Monarch and the others. While we were waiting for Hall Chief Yu suddenly stood up and told me, No, We can't wait any longer. Since Banished King and the rest have met with an accident, someone must have found out about Royal Dome's spiritual master's remains. We must send the remains and items to the sect leader as soon as possible. Thus, Hall Chief, you brought me to look for Hall Chief you. Oh. Hall Chief nodded and smiled. I understand now. No wonder Wang Qi was so secretive and refused to say anything. It turns out that he had so many secrets. Yes, Hall Chief you. Huang Su said with a bitter face. My hall master told me again and again not to trust anyone and not to tell the truth to others. You must keep it a secret from me. TSK. Hall Chief, you glared at Huang Su. I'm not just anyone. Moreover, the people on this airship are all my trusted aides. Look at the three of them. They're the sect leader's personal guards. How could they leak the news? Yes, that's what I thought too. That's why I dare to tell you. Huang Su heaved a sigh of relief and smiled apologetically. You've thought about it. Don't worry about it. Hall Chief, you smiled and took out a crystal token. He activated his dermic powers, and a vague topographic map appeared. On the map, there was a green dot flying rapidly. Hall Chief, you looked at it and said, We'll reach River Origin City in 4 hours. After that, there will be teleportation portals. There won't be any accidents. Huang Su was shocked when he heard Hall Chief you mention the accident. He couldn't help but look out of the flying boat. At this moment, the airship was rushing into a layer of dark clouds. The thick clouds covered the light, and strange shadows streaked across Huang Su's head, as if an invisible hand was brushing past him. Huang Su couldn't help but tremble slightly as he hurriedly activated his magic power to defend himself. Who is it? Hall Master Yu couldn't help but shout. Who is it? Following Hall Master Yu's voice, a burst of light shot into the sky from the flying ship nearby. The dozen or so spirit-severing stage cultivators all moved. They took out all kinds of magic treasures and covered the area within 100 miles. The magic treasure dispelled the dark clouds, and the setting sun behind the flying boat sprinkled its afterglow onto the flying boat. However, there was no one else in the sky aside from the flying boat. Seeing that there was no one around, Huang Su's heart calmed down. He hurriedly turned to Hall Master Yu and asked in a low voice, Hall Master Yu, what did you discover? This old man didn't discover anything? Hall Master Yu looked at Huang Su strangely and said, Didn't you discover something and activate your magic power to defend yourself? This junior. Huang Su was speechless. After a moment of hesitation, he said, This junior is seeing things. Don't worry. Hall Master Yu waved his hand and instructed, We are getting closer to River Origin City. We must be careful, yes. The guards on the left replied in unison. Huang Su saw a large city standing between the mountains in the distance. Many cultivators were either flying, standing on flying boats, or sitting on flying beasts. Only then did he feel completely at ease. When the flying boat landed on a tall mountain at the edge of River Origin City, Hall Master Yu immediately brought Huang Su down from the flying boat and flew towards River Origin City. River Origin City's teleportation array was not difficult to find. Hall Master Yu and Huang Su hurriedly arrived at the building where the teleportation array was located. The disciples of the Strength Execution Hall who were waiting nearby immediately came over to greet them. Hall Master Yu did not explain much. He only asked, Where's the sect master now? This disciple just received a message. The sect master is already rushing towards Night Wind Valley. The disciple hurriedly reported. Night Wind Valley? Huang Su did not understand. However, Hall Master Yu was shocked. Isn't that the Chu-Pu Immortal Alliance's meeting? Why is he rushing towards Night Wind Valley? Could it be? At this point, Hall Master Yu did not have time to explain. He waved his hand and said, Let's go, Huang Su. This old man will personally send you there. Thank you, Hall Master Yu. Huang Su was confused. However, seeing how solemn Hall Master Yu was, he did not dare to delay. He followed Hall Master Yu and stepped into the hall where the teleportation array was located. What followed next was an experience that Huang Su would never forget for the rest of his life. Huang Su was an early-stage spirit-severing stage cultivator. He was also the Vice Hall Master of the Fallen Immortal Sect. What kind of teleportation array had he not seen before? However, for the next 3 days, he followed Hall Master Yu continuously through the teleportation array. Furthermore, other than a few teleportation arrays, most of them were extremely long-distance teleportation arrays. The pressure of these teleportation arrays fell on his body again and again. Although he used his cultivation method to expel the pressure, the residue of the teleportation array slowly accumulated in his body. An unbearable tiredness gradually emerged from the bottom of his heart. When he came out of the teleportation array for the last time, Huang Su suddenly felt that the world was spinning. The discomfort that ordinary low-level disciples felt when using the teleportation array appeared on a spirit-severing stage cultivator. Huang Su's body became weak, and he collapsed outside the teleportation array. Io, Vice Hall Master Huang. Hall Master Yu was slightly stunned. He hurriedly waved his hand to support Huang Su and said apologetically, "It's my fault. I didn't expect. Say no more." Huang Su suppressed the disgust in his chest and stood up reluctantly. He whispered, "Let's continue walking. There's no need." Hall Master Yu was slightly moved. He looked at the guards in armor on the left and the several generals who had surrounded them and said with a smile, "We have arrived at Nightwind Valley. Don't you see that there are already guards outside the teleportation array? Who are you waiting for?" A general in the late stage of spirit-severing stage held a flying sword in his hand and asked coldly. Hall Master Yu was already prepared. He took out the token of the fallen immortal sect from his waist and handed it over. He said, "I'm Hall Master Yu Kong of the fallen immortal sect Strength Hall. This is Vice Hall Master Huang Su of the Jingjing Hall. We have urgent matters to discuss with our sect leader, Xian Xiaozi." The general took the token and looked at it. He returned it to Yu Kong and said, "Your sect leader just left for less than half an hour. Hurry over. If you wait for him to enter the bounded domain, I'm afraid you can only see him after the alliance meeting." Yes, thank you." Yu Kong did not dare to be negligent. He hurriedly cupped his hands and flew out of the teleportation array with Huang Su. The teleportation array in the Nightwind Valley was located within a huge cave. As Huang Su flew out along the spacious mountain path, before he could reach the ground, a ghost-like wail and wolf-like howl could be heard from outside the mountain path. Huang Su, whose blood had just calmed down, was caught off guard. His Yuan spirit swayed and actually showed signs of leaving his body. Huang Su was shocked. He hurriedly channeled his spiritual power and pointed at a light green jade pendant on his chest. Shua! The jade pendant glowed and instantly covered Huang Su's whole body. Phew! Huang Su's ears were quiet for a while. The howling sound had disappeared. He could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. His face became paler. Damn it! Not to mention Huang Su, who was in a hurry to deal with it. Even Yu Kong's expression changed a few times at this time. The brilliance around his body flashed quickly. He cursed. How many months has it been? Why is the Nightwind Valley so terrifying? Huang Su had not heard of the name Nightwind Valley before. However, when he flew to the ground with Yu Kong, he immediately understood the origin of the name. He saw that it was an almost skyless valley. The surroundings were covered in great dust. The huge mountain peak was like a lonely giant that covered the place where his spiritual sense swept through. The sky was filled with storms and sand. When the sand fell on the mountain peak, it was like a stream of water. Not only did it strike the mountain peak, but it also fell down like a stream of water. Thousands of strange fine lines were engraved on the left side of the small pits. The storm was also like a roaring wind spirit that blew aimlessly on the mountain peak. When the wind blew past the small pits and the strange fine lines, it naturally produced a strange howling sound. The howling sound of the wind rose and fell in the tens of thousands of miles of the valley. It was comparable to a huge array. Even a spirit-severing stage cultivator like Huang Su would lose his soul for a long time if he fell into it. However, in this skyless valley, amidst the oppressive storm, in the east, there was a gentle light pillar that pierced through the dust and appeared in front of Yukong and Huang Su's eyes. "Let's go." Yukong raised his hand and pointed at the light pillar. "That is the place where the Tao Alliance gathers. A long time ago, this old man came here with the sect master." "The Tao Alliance gatherings?" Huang Su was dumbfounded. He had never thought that he would be able to barge into the Tao Alliance gatherings. However, Huang Su was the only one who was confused. He flew with Yukong for a while. When he saw that the sandstorm had disrupted the light protecting him and Yukong, he called out softly, "Hall Master you, let's teleport over. What nonsense are you spouting?" Li Kong laughed, ignoring the fact that teleporting so close to the Tao Alliance's assembly is disrespectful. Even this Nightwind Gorge has been sealed away by the Tao Alliance's spirit treasures. How could we possibly teleport here? Huang Su was helpless. He could only follow Yukong and fly with all his might. He had never been teleported in such a sorry state before. He had never flown in such an awkward manner. As Huang Su flew, he discovered that there seemed to be people in the storm nearby. However, wherever his spiritual sense and eyes scanned, he couldn't see any human figures. Furthermore, as he flew, a heavy pressure gradually formed. The sandstorm was like a swamp, obstructing Huang Su's flight. Even a nascent soul in his body was gradually being sealed. He was also unable to circulate his true essence as he wished. When he looked at the light pillar in the distance, it seemed to be forever far away. No matter how he flew, he couldn't get close to it. Chapter 4877. Dong! The sound of the bell rang like a tsunami. Even the storm was silenced by the sound. "Oh no!" Yukong exclaimed. "The conference is about to begin. What should we do?" Huang Su's heart was filled with regret. After all, he had already made it this far. How could he not catch up with Xian Xiaozi? All his efforts had been for naught. "Forget it," Yukong sighed. "Let's wait until sect leader comes out of the conference. It's just Huang Qiong's spiritual masters." At this moment, a surprised voice rang out. "Yukong? Oh, Huang Su, why are you here? Could it be that something big has happened in the sect?" Huang Su was overjoyed to hear this familiar voice, and he turned toward his right hand, only to discover that several body integration cultivators were rushing toward him from where the storm had fallen silent. Wasn't the person standing at the edge of the circle his sect leader, Xian Xiaozi? Xian Xiaozi looked very young. His face was as round as a full moon, and his two bright eyes were filled with surprise. Xian Xiaozi wore a faint golden Dao crown on his head. A pearl the size of a fist was embedded in the crown. The pearl shone with a golden brilliance. Not only did the brilliance block the sand that was pouncing on his face, it also shone on his face, giving off an indescribable glow. Huang Su's heart finally settled when he saw Xian Xiaozi. However, before he could say anything, Yukong hurriedly stepped forward and bowed. "Greetings, sect leader." "Sect leader, something big has happened in the sect. However, this is a joyous occasion. It's not what sect leader wants. I've personally escorted Huang Su here. Please report this to me in detail." "Greetings, sect leader." Huang Su was a little displeased that Yukong had taken the lead. However, he was overjoyed when he heard Yukong's courteous words. He hurriedly stepped forward and said respectfully, "Disciple, Xian Xiaozi, the bell has already rung once. If it doesn't ring 3 times, we will be expelled." A cultivator beside, Xian Xiaozi indifferently glanced at Huang Su and the others and reminded them in a displeased manner. Xian Xiaozi smiled and turned around. "Fellow cultivators, please excuse me. I have some matters to attend to in the sect." Before they could leave, Xian Xiaozi said anxiously, "Huang Su, make it short." "Yes, sect leader." Huang Su did not dare to speak too loudly. He raised his hand and took off the storage bracelet on his hand before handing it to Xian Xiaozi. He only transmitted his voice to Xian Xiaozi. "I found the place where spiritual master Huang Qiong underwent his tribulation in the Fengyan Kingdom's Xia mountain range." "Ah, you actually found it?" Xian Xiaozi was shocked as he stared at the storage ring in Huang Su's hand in disbelief. He reached out to grab it and transmitted his voice to Huang Su, The heavens truly reward those who persevere. Huang Su, this old man understands. When we return to the mountain gate, this old man will definitely record your merit. That's not all. Huang Su looked at Xian Xiaozi as he accepted the storage ring and felt a wave of relief wash over him. He hurriedly sent a voice transmission to Xian Xiaozi and said, "I've also found a secret technique for selecting spiritual roots. It can solve the problem of the fallen immortal sect selection." Just as Huang Su said this, dong, another bell chime sounded. This time, it was 3 times louder than the previous one, and the sound was also twice as long. "There's no time." Xian Xiaozi hurriedly moved and said, "Yukong, take Huang Su with you and turn back first. Once I return to my sect, I'll report to them in detail." "Yes, sect leader," Yukong replied. Huang Su shouted, "I've recorded all the details in this jade slip. Sect leader will know once you see it." "All right." Xian Xiaozi waved his hand and rushed into the storm and disappeared. "Let's go." After the second bell chime, the restrictive force in the surrounding space increased tremendously. Yukong could not take it anymore and hurriedly said, "When the third bell chime, the Tao Alliance's Alliance Conference will begin. The Night Wind Valley will be sealed off. If we don't make it back in time, I'm afraid others will misunderstand. Thank you, Home Master Yu." Huang Su knew that he had succeeded. Although chasing to the Tao Alliance's Alliance Conference and passing the jade slip to Xian Xiaozi was making a mountain out of a molehill, wasn't this the effect that Huang Su wanted? He smiled and cupped his fists towards Yukong. He, Yukong had personally come to send him off. How could he return empty-handed? He smiled and did not say anything else. Instead, he rushed into the storm in the distance. As the sect leader, how could Xian Xiaozi not know what Yukong and Huang Su were thinking? However, he was still very happy as he moved his body and flew towards the light pillar not far away. After all, he had already found the remains of spiritual master Huang Qiong during his tribulation. This would be of great use to his cultivation and even his future tribulation. His fellow Taoists had already disappeared. In a nearby storm, there were a few faint figures who were in a hurry, just like Xian Xiaozi. They did not have time to talk to each other. After a while, the storm weakened. The warm jade color was like sunlight that filled the world. A valley that seemed to be several thousand miles in size was revealed before Xian Xiaozi's eyes under the bright sunlight. The valley was filled with jade pillars. Every single one of them shone with a blinding light. The light gathered together to form a pillar of light that supported the heavens and the earth. It was as if the heavens and the earth were split open. At this moment, there were cultivators sitting cross-legged on top of the jade pillars. These cultivators were solemn and silent, as if they were meditating. The moment Xian Xiaozi's body touched the jade color, he opened his mouth and a palm-sized jade piece flew out. The jade piece was covered with veins like a green leaf. As he thought about it, he blew another mouthful of true energy onto the jade piece. Swoosh, swoosh. With a soft sound, the veins on the jade piece extended out and landed on a jade pillar in the distance. At the same time, the jade piece expanded rapidly and turned into a leaf-like praying mat. It landed at Xian Xiaozi's feet. Xian Xiaozi did not dare to hesitate. He quickly sat down cross-legged. Swoosh! The praying mat turned into a stream of light and shot through the jade color. It landed on a jade pillar not far away. Dang! The cattail hassock fell, and a third bell rang. Except for the space near the jade pillar, all the jade colors emitted a crisp sound like a frozen lake. Kacha! A kind of solidification spread out in all directions. Damn it! A furious voice could be heard vaguely. About 1,000 meters away from Xian Xiaozi, an old man dressed in a crimson Taoist robe was holding an identical piece of jade in his hand. When he saw that the color of the jade had solidified, he did not dare to fight against it. He cursed angrily and quickly retreated. It was obvious that he had arrived late and could not participate in the Alliance Conference. Almost. Xian Xiaozi felt lucky. He raised his hand and was about to take out the jade slip from his storage ring to check it out. Boom, boom, boom. Right at that moment, a rumbling sound rang out from the valley. The jade pillar beneath Xian Xiaozi shook violently and slowly rose into the sky. About 10 kilometers away from Xian Xiaozi, another jade pillar that was several hundred meters thick was emitting a faint golden light. It soared into the sky several times more fiercely than the jade pillar beneath Xian Xiaozi. On top of that jade pillar, a cultivator who looked like a child was sitting cross-legged. Although the jade pillar's radiant light was restricting his aura, it still exuded a majestic and oppressive aura. What's going on? Xian Xiaozi felt a little puzzled. He looked at the place before him, and his gaze landed on the gigantic jade pillar. He thought to himself, Alliance Chief, why did you enter the Alliance gathering in such a hurry without even saying the usual greetings? Xian Xiaozi. A voice rang out in Xian Xiaozi's ears. Xian Xiaozi hurriedly looked to the side. Another cultivator, whose back was originally facing him, was now facing Alliance Lord One, who was at the center of the hall. The cultivator turned his head to look at Xian Xiaozi and sent him a voice transmission. The Tao Alliance's Alliance Conference is supposed to be held once every 500 years. It has only been 200 years since the last Alliance Conference. Why is it suddenly convening? Could it be that there's something urgent? Xian Xiaozi looked at the old cultivator and recognized him. He was Yu Jiangling, the head of the Yu clan, an early-stage Mahayana cultivator. Xian Xiaozi did not dare to be negligent. He hurriedly transmitted his voice with a smile. Senior Yu, you're the most powerful person in our Tsiupu Immortal Alliance. If even you don't know, how could I know? You really don't know? Yu Jiangling was not surprised. Rather than saying that it was a rhetorical question, it was more like stating a fact. Xian Xiaozi nodded and said, I received Alliance Master Wen's message and thought that it was a meeting of our Tsiupu Immortal Alliance. However, before I could rush to River Origin City, Alliance Master Wen actually issued an emergency summon, urging all the sect masters, loose cultivators, and family heads of the 18 countries of the Immortal Alliance to come to Nightwind Valley. I rushed here without stopping. How could I have received any news? That's strange. Yu Jiangling pinched his chin and looked into the distance. His gaze even went past the jade pillar where Alliance Master Wen was standing. He said in a low voice, What's going on in our Yilin continent? Why is there such a huge commotion? When I received Wen Jie's message that day, I was puzzled. There's still more than 10 years until the 100-year Alliance meeting. There's no need to guess. Xian Xiaozi also looked into the distance and said, When the Alliance meeting comes, we'll naturally know. In any case, our Tsiupu Immortal Alliance is located at the very edge of the Tao Alliance. Everything has nothing to do with us. At this moment, the entire jade-colored space had already been sealed. Everyone's divine senses could no longer travel very far. However, Xian Xiaozi could already see that aside from the sect masters, family heads, and loose cultivators of the 18 countries of the Tsiupu Immortal Alliance, the Autumn Immortal Alliance, the Qiangwei Immortal Alliance, and the Flying Feather Immortal Alliance had also arrived. The Autumn Immortal Alliance's Alliance Master, esteemed Yinxiu, the Qiangwei Immortal Alliance's Alliance Master, Reverend Jiesang, and the Flying Feather Immortal Alliance's Alliance Master, Farian Xia, were also sitting on the 3 jade pillars far away from Alliance Master Wen Jie. Xian Xiaozi didn't need to extend his divine senses any further. He knew that aside from the 3 Alliance Masters that he could see with his own eyes, 9 of the 81 Immortal Alliances of the Tao Alliance must have already gathered in Nightwind Valley. The Sword Alliance's Alliance Master, Shi Zhong, the Jiangxia Immortal Alliance's Alliance Master, Ji Yuzi, the Basan Immortal Alliance's Alliance Master, Han Sun, the Enlightenment Alliance's Alliance Master, Qi Yuzi, and the Lake Sage Pill Alliance's Alliance Master, Qi Yuzi, were also sitting in places that he couldn't see. Chapter 4878. As the jade pillar shot up into the jade-colored sky, the surroundings gradually became silent. Xian Xiaozi felt a heavy pressure coming from every part of his body. At the same time, The jade pillar beneath him produced a repulsive force, as if it was trying to push him up into the sky. This strange feeling made him extremely uncomfortable. However, before he could activate his magic power, the huge jade pillar beneath Alliance Master when suddenly emitted a dazzling green light. This light was like a bright star. Then, a dark green brilliance swept down from the top of the pillar. The dark green brilliance pierced through the jade-colored sky like starlight. The praying mats beneath Xian Xiaozi and the others also emitted a faint green radiance. Similarly, the radiance swept downwards along the jade pillars beneath them. The ordinary green brilliance protected Xian Xiaozi, transforming him into the shape of a huge leaf. All the discomfort from before instantly disappeared. Another moment later, the dark green jade pillar beneath Alliance Master when trembled violently. Amidst the rumbling sounds, fist-sized runes appeared on the surface of the jade pillar. The runes tumbled like boiling water. Layers of powerful ripples ignored space and instantly landed on the light green jade pillar beneath Xian Xiaozi and the others. As soon as the ripples landed, Xian Xiaozi saw the jade pillar shaking again. Crack, crack, crack. Creases appeared on the surface of the jade pillar. At the same time, a fist-sized light spot condensed in the center of the jade pillar. A wave of extremely pure spiritual chi of heaven and earth rushed into his lift. Xian Xiaozi did not dare to delay. In his joy, he hurriedly activated his cultivation technique to absorb this vast amount of spiritual chi of heaven and earth into his body. Just as the spiritual chi of heaven and earth entered his body, the light spot continued to expand. Layers of tree rings appeared on the surface of the jade pillar. As the tree rings spread to the surface of the jade pillar, the creases became deeper and deeper. The jade pillar was about to transform into the shape of a tree branch. Just as Xian Xiaozi felt that his nascent soul had expanded by half, a crisp crack rang out. The spiritual chi of heaven and earth came to an abrupt stop. Xian Xiaozi sighed and opened his eyes. It had been a long time since he last inhaled such pure spiritual chi of heaven and earth. What entered Xian Xiaozi's eyes were more than 10 jade pillars that had already turned into crooked tree branches. The bottom of the jade pillars had broken off, and the tree branches extended toward the center. At this moment, the jade pillar beneath Alliance Master had also transformed into a tree trunk. Dozens of vortexes that were hundreds of feet long appeared on it. The vortexes produced a suction force, and strange runes floated about, sucking the tree branches beneath Xian Xiaozi and the others into them. Boom! When the dozens of tree branches landed on the trunk, Xian Xiaozi's body trembled slightly. At the same time, a light flashed before his eyes, and his chi circulation changed. The clouds in the sky swayed, and thousands of spiritual energy transformed into indescribable demonic spirits that played in the clouds. Under the sky, white clouds spread out, and the scenery of mountains and rivers could be seen through the white clouds. Around Xian Xiaozi, dense spiritual chi of heaven and earth that was different from the outside world appeared. Xian Xiaozi couldn't help but take a deep breath, and a fragrant smell spread out from the tree trunk in front of him. At this moment, Alliance Master Wen's body was already slowly descending. The tree trunk glowed with a dark green radiance, and connected with the tree branches of Xian Xiaozi and the others. Xian Xiaozi could clearly see that the dozens of cultivators from the other 18 countries were sitting cross-legged on similar leaves. Like him, they were all trying their best to stimulate their human bodies. Looking to the left, other than the dark green brilliance, there were other dark green balls of light. These balls of light also looked like tree trunks, but the situation inside was blurry, and it was impossible to tell if there was a human figure inside. Fellow Taoists, on the dark green tree trunk, Alliance Master Wen Jie opened his mouth and said, "I'm sorry to have gathered all of you here in such a hurry." Wen Jie's voice was filled with vicissitudes of life. Although his voice wasn't loud, everyone could hear him clearly within the radiance of the tree trunk. A middle-aged female cultivator smiled and said, Alliance Master One, you're too polite. We're all members of the Immortal Alliance, and it's our duty to gather here on your orders. The female cultivator only said one sentence and didn't say anything else. Obviously, she was also absorbing spiritual qi into her body. Yu Jiangling, who was talking to Xian Xiaozi just now, said, Alliance Master One, may I know what's so important that we've come to the Alliance Conference today? Wen Jie shrugged and smiled bitterly. Let alone fellow Taoists, even I'm confused now. I first received a yellow-level alliance token from the Tao Alliance, which requested the 81 immortal alliances under the Tao Alliance to convene a conference to discuss the Heaven Alliance. However, just as I released the alliance token, the Tao Alliance issued another Earth-level alliance token, requesting for an emergency alliance conference. As for the topic of the alliance conference, the alliance token didn't mention it at all. Damn it, Yu Jiangling cursed under his breath. What's there to discuss about the Heaven Alliance? Now that the spiritual qi of heaven and earth has changed, we can't even take care of ourselves. Who's going to fight the Heaven Alliance? If the Heaven Alliance has the ability, just come and kill us. Wen Jie looked at Yu Jiangling and listened to his complaints. He smiled and said, Old ancestor, you're right. Our Chupu Immortal Alliance is the furthest away from the Heaven Alliance among the 81 immortal alliances of the Tao Alliance. We don't need to be involved in ordinary fights. At most, we can give some moral support, but we don't need to be involved in the Heaven Alliance's discussion. However, since the Tao Alliance issued an Earth-level alliance token, which is second only to the danger of the apocalypse, there must be something extremely important. Xian Xiaozi's heart skipped a beat. He recalled that Huang Su had mentioned the spiritual qi of heaven and earth had changed. He smiled and said, What could be extremely important at this time? Perhaps the seniors of the Tao Alliance have found the source of the change in the spiritual qi of heaven and earth? How can it be that simple? A fat cultivator in the distance snorted and said in a disdainful tone. Xian Xiaozi sneered. This fat cultivator was Li Pan, a rogue cultivator from the Danshao country. He was able to join the Chu-Pu Immortal Alliance because his cultivation had reached the early stage of the Mahayana realm. Usually, Li Pan was arrogant and looked down on the sect leaders and the aristocratic families. He often talked nonsense. Xian Xiaozi said sarcastically, Yes, of course it's not that simple. We're all racking our brains for the cultivation of our younger disciples. Only Li Pan can do whatever he wants. If I want to, I can establish a sect at any time. Li Pan replied without hesitation. Xian Xiaozi smiled and looked at a woman on a leaf in the distance. He said, This is your Danshao country's matter. I can't interfere. It's best if you ask Fairy Qingyan of the Huasun sect. If she allows it, you can establish a sect. The Huasun sect was naturally the #1 sect in the Danshao country. Fairy Qingyan was also an early-stage Mahayana realm cultivator. What was special was that Fairy Qingyan was known for her narrow-mindedness in the Chu-Pu Immortal Alliance. How could she allow another Mahayana realm cultivator to appear in the Danshao country? As expected, the moment Xian Xiaozi finished speaking, Fairy Qingyan glanced at the two of them indifferently. Although she was far away, her voice was as cold as ice. There's no need to ask me. Whoever wants to establish a sect in Danshao Nation can do so as long as they can endure the tedious process. Wan Jie smiled and said, Fellow Taoists, please take a few breaths of spiritual qi and think about how to answer the questions of the seniors of the Tao Alliance. These are all seniors at the peak of the Tribulation Transcendent stage. Unfortunately, before Wen Jie could finish his words, 9 fist-sized balls of lightning appeared in the clouds in the sky. As soon as the balls of lightning appeared, they created a shockwave that shook the heavens and earth. This shockwave was mixed with the unparalleled laws of heaven and earth and enveloped the entire space. The 9 balls of dark green light trembled slightly within the laws of heaven and earth. Then, they rapidly elongated and expanded. The demonic spirit phantoms that were swimming in the flowing clouds were quickly shattered by the airwaves. turning into twisted crystals that fell into the lightning. Immediately after, buzz, 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 the buzzing sounds were heard again, and the lightning formed a vortex. A huge suction force was generated from the vortex, and it fell onto the rapidly expanding dark green tree trunk. The moment the suction force landed on the tree trunk, the entire tree trunk shook violently. Another kind of heavy pressure came unexpectedly. Xian Xiaozi's body tensed up and many illusions appeared in front of him. Moreover, as the illusions overlapped, fine cracks appeared in the void. Boom! In just a few breaths' time, Xian Xiaozi heard another loud noise. After this loud noise, there was an abnormal silence. The 9 gigantic vortexes in the sky disappeared without a trace. Another seemingly boundless sky appeared above the heads of Xian Xiaozi and the others. At this time, a gigantic dark green tree stood under the sky. Countless runes appeared on the incomparably huge tree trunk. As the runes flowed, they emitted a dark green brilliance. The brilliance of the brilliance streaked across the space, projecting into the boundless heaven and earth. On this huge tree, there were a total of 81 branches of varying heights. On each branch, there were many branches of different sizes. On each branch, there was a leaf. On each leaf, there was a cultivator sitting cross-legged. Xian Xiaozi was one of them. In the silence, Xian Xiaozi looked around. The other cultivators of the Immortal Alliance that he couldn't see clearly earlier were now clearly in his sight. Not only that, he could also see the 81 Alliance Masters sitting on the branches clearly. On the crown of the huge tree that seemed to cover the entire sky, there were dozens of tribulation-passing cultivators talking about something with smiles on their faces. Although these tribulation-passing cultivators had already restrained their auras, an invisible pressure and will still press down on Xian Xiaozi's heart through the dark green brilliance like a mountain, making it hard for him to breathe. Damn it, Xian Xiaozi couldn't help but sigh again. When will I be able to cultivate to the tribulation-passing stage? After sighing, Xian Xiaozi couldn't help but release his divine sense like before. At this time, the entire space was different from before. There were no special restrictions on divine sense. Xian Xiaozi released his divine sense to the limit, but he still couldn't touch the tree trunk in the distance. Vote for it. Vote for it. Give a recommendation vote, collect it, or tip it. Chapter 4879. After a while, Xian Xiaozi retracted his divine sense with some resentment. He stretched out his hands to take a closer look and thought to himself, what kind of formation is this space? Or is this tree some kind of spiritual treasure? My Chupu Immortal Alliance and Xiao Immortal Alliance are clearly in the Night Wind Valley, while the other Immortal Alliances of the Tao Alliance are in other places. Yet, through this tree, I feel like they're right in front of me. Also, is I hear in my physical body, my primordial spirit, or even a projection of my primordial spirit? As he thought about it, Xian Xiaozi wanted to activate his magic power. However, this thought disappeared in a flash because he had already tested it before. Be it his physical body, his nascent soul, or his storage ring, everything that could be used on the Yilin continent could be used in this space. Xian Xiaozi almost believed that if the tribulation-passing seniors of the Tao Alliance were willing, cultivators from any two places on the Yilin continent could meet and even fight to the death in this space, no matter how far apart they were. Since they had arrived at the Alliance conference, Wen Jiawen of the Chu-Pu Immortal Alliance did not dare to speak loudly. He sat cross-legged in the middle of a small tree trunk and looked up at the tribulation-passing cultivators. No one knew what he was thinking. Half a meal's worth of time had passed. Cough, cough. A series of coughs sounded from the top of the tree. The dozens of tribulation-passing cultivators who had been whispering to each other stopped and looked at the center of the tree. There was no dazzling light, nor was there any earth-shattering tremors. A short old man had appeared just like that. However, when they saw this old man, the dozens of tribulation-passing cultivators were all moved. They all stood up and bowed respectfully. "Greetings, Alliance leader." As everyone's strength increased, a tall, middle-aged cultivator appeared behind the old man. Although this middle-aged cultivator's divine aura was restrained and his every move was filled with the power of the laws, he still stood beside the old man and did not dare to take a step forward. "Doubt, Alliance leader? This is old man Gu Qiong." The tribulation-passing cultivators did not speak loudly, but Xian Shaozi heard them clearly. He was also stunned. Ever since he entered the Chu Pu Immortal Alliance as the sect leader of the fallen immortal sect, he had heard of the Dao Alliance leader, old man Gu Qiong's name. However, he had never seen him before. He had even asked Wen Jie, but even Wen Jie had never seen him before. However, he had heard from Wen Jie that although old man Gu Qiong was the Dao Alliance's alliance master, he never interfered in the Dao Alliance's affairs. He didn't even participate in the alliance meetings. Instead, he left everything in the Dao Alliance to the Vice Alliance Master, Reverend Ji Yin. He was the middle-aged cultivator next to old man Gu Qiong. "Ji, greetings, Lord Alliance Master." In an instant, countless excited voices rang out from all corners of the Alliance Conference. Xian Shaozi came back to his senses and climbed up from the leaf as well. He bowed respectfully. "All of you get up." Old man Gu Qiong's voice was filled with the vicissitudes of life, as if he had seen through everything. As he waved his hand, Xian Shaozi felt a gentle force emerge from beneath him. This force did not carry any dust or dharma power. It seemed to be the pure power of space. Xian Shaozi was shocked, because he clearly knew that the tree wasn't connected at all. How could old man Gu Qiong let everyone feel his strength? What kind of divine ability was this? "Thank you, Alliance Master." Xian Shaozi's shock seemed to be shared by the tens of thousands of cultivators. When they replied in unison, their voices were filled with shocking momentum. Old man Gu Qiong waved his hand amiably when he saw that everyone had risen. He gestured for everyone to sit down before he looked around. Xian Shaozi did not know what was going on, but he felt that old man Gu Qiong's gaze was very similar to his master's. It was filled with love and concern. Xian Shaozi even felt that old man Gu Qiong's gaze lingered on him for a moment. Then, old man Gu Qiong said, "I'm ashamed to say this. Although I'm the Alliance Master of the Dao Alliance, I haven't been to the Alliance Conference many times. I remember that the last time was during the invasion of the Demon Realm." "Yes, Lord Alliance Master is right." Perfected Ji Yin smiled and said, "If Lord Alliance Master hadn't killed the Blood Shadow Demon Sovereign back then, the Yilin continent would have fallen into the hands of the demon race." No. Old man Gu Qiong waved his hand and said, "My strength is insignificant. The key is the cultivators of the Immortal Alliance who set up the ambush. They are the real heroes." The dozens of tribulation-passing cultivators next to him laughed and said, "Alliance Master, you're too modest. They were just bait. Without Alliance Master's help, how could we be a match for the Blood Shadow Demon Sovereign who is almost indestructible? Haha, a real man doesn't boast about his past achievements. I won't be able to lead the Yilin continent for long. If nothing unexpected happens, this will be the last time I attend the Alliance Conference." Old man Gu Qiong said with a smile, "I hope I can do something for the Dao Alliance." "Oh." A middle-stage tribulation-passing cultivator next to him was startled. He asked in a low voice, "Lord Alliance Master, is the demon race really invading again?" "Ji Yin, you tell him." Old man Gu Qiong smiled and turned to look at Perfected Ji Yin. "Okay, please take a seat, Lord Alliance Master." Perfected Ji Yin waved his hand, and a rattan chair made of leaves appeared beside old man Gu Qiong. Old man Gu Qiong looked around and sat down. Just like old man Gu Qiong, Perfected Ji Yin looked around and glanced at everyone in the Alliance Conference. However, his gaze was as sharp as a sword, causing Xian Shaozi's heart to tremble. There are still 11 cultivators who haven't arrived yet, including the Alliance Master of the Immortal Alliance, Daoist Ji Yin said coldly. "I really didn't expect this. Could it be that the Tao Alliance's rules have become mere decorations today? From now on, these 11 people are expelled from the Tao Alliance. They can't re-enter the Tao Alliance unless they make a great contribution. The sects they belong to. Ahem, Jian. Old man Gu Qiong smiled and said, an individual's mistake is an individual's. There's no need to involve their sects. Yes, Lord Alliance Master. Perfected Ji Yin replied. He looked at the crowd and said, you don't have to feel wrong for them. If it were under normal circumstances, I wouldn't care if they were late. But today, the Tao Alliance's Earth-level Alliance token was activated. How could they not care? Aside from Old Man Gu Qiong, the Tao Alliance also invited Yu Hongzi, Feria Mo Yun, the Yi family's patriarch, and other late-stage tribulation-passing cultivators to discuss this matter. Even the seniors came on time. So how could they not come? Yes, Alliance Master. More than 10 Alliance Masters of the Immortal Alliance replied from all over the Alliance Conference. Perfected Ji Yin lectured a few more times before he changed the topic and said, today I invited all of you here not only to discuss a few things with you, but also to inform all the disciples of the Tao Alliance about what we're going to discuss. We'll let them know what kind of danger we're in and what we should do to get out of this hopeless situation. Yes, Vice Alliance Master, we'll listen to your orders. The tribulation-passing cultivators sitting high on the treetops said in unison. Taoist Ji Yin nodded slightly and said, today, our Tao Alliance will discuss a few things. The first is the change in the world's spiritual energy. Where should the cultivators of our Tao Alliance go on their cultivation path? As soon as Perfected Ji Yin spoke, the cultivators of the Tao Alliance who were sitting on the treetops and branches in the Alliance Conference couldn't help but murmur among themselves. The scene instantly became chaotic. However, Perfected Ji Yin didn't get angry. Instead, he quietly listened and watched. After the time it takes to finish a cup of tea, he finally spoke up. I know that the spiritual energy of heaven and earth has changed for hundreds of years, but the Tao Alliance has never publicly acknowledged it, nor has it ever held an Alliance conference. Haha, this is the first Alliance conference to be held after the change in the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Thus, the change in the spiritual energy of heaven and earth will be the main topic of discussion. Of course, although the Tao Alliance hasn't said anything about the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, the disciples of the Tao Alliance have already started investigating this matter. The efforts of the Tao Alliance are far beyond what you can imagine. Perfected Ji Yin paused for a moment before continuing. The disciples of the Tao Alliance have not only explored the Yilin continent of the Tao Alliance to see if there are spatial tiers, but they have also organized Qi refinement, foundation establishment, and golden core cultivators to test the effects of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth on cultivation. They have also studied how to cultivate under the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, how to refine tools, how to refine pills, how to cultivate spirit herbs, and so on. However, 500 to 600 years is truly a short period of time, and there hasn't been a clear conclusion yet. In my opinion, this investigation won't have a clear result for at least 1,000 or 10,000 years. Perfected Ji Yin's words were like a huge rock thrown into a deep pool, immediately creating waves. Not to mention the people under the treetops. Even the tribulation-passing seniors on the treetops couldn't help but speak up. After all, the Tao Alliance's strength was extraordinary. What they did was far beyond that of ordinary sections. If Perfected Ji Yin said so, then the spiritual energy of heaven and earth would probably affect the development of the Tao Alliance. Moreover, Perfected Ji Yin had just revealed the word impasse, so how could they not know that the situation had reached a critical point? Sure enough, Perfected Ji Yin waited for a while before he raised his hand again, signaling everyone to stop. He looked around and saw the dozens of tribulation-passing cultivators on the left and said, as you've all discussed, it's not wrong for me to use the term impasse to describe the current Tao Alliance. I don't want to say more. Today, I just want to ask all of you, fellow Taoists, have you recently sensed the gate of the immortal realm? The dozens of tribulation-passing cultivators fell silent upon hearing Perfected Ji Yan's words. They looked at each other, and no one was willing to speak first. Since ancient times, the cultivators of the Tao Alliance who had cultivated to the peak of Mahayana realm could see the secrets of the heavenly Tao and the crudest outline of it. The outline of the heavenly Tao was called the Gate of the Heavenly Tao by the cultivators of the Tao Alliance. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Yin, vote for it, give a recommendation vote, collect it, and give it as thanks for all your support. Chapter 4880. Once the heavenly Tao gate became clear, the heavenly tribulation would descend from the heavenly Tao gate. It was like the hand of the heavenly Tao cleansing the body of a Mahayana cultivator and sorting out the flaws in their cultivation. If a Mahayana cultivator was lucky enough to pass the heavenly tribulation and reach the tribulation passing stage, the spiritual energy in their body would gradually transform into immortal spiritual energy. As the amount of immortal spiritual energy increased, not only would the repulsive force of the Yilin continent become stronger, but the aura of the immortal realm would also become clearer. At that time, the tribulation-passing cultivator would be able to sense the guiding force of the immortal realm. At the later stages of the tribulation-passing stage, the guiding force would become stronger and stronger. The tribulation-passing cultivator would first sense the location, then form an outline, and finally form a gate before ascending. This was why the Yilin continent called it the Immortal Realm Gate. The Heavenly Tao Gate was actually born out of the Immortal Realm Gate. These two gates were the most crucial points of cultivation for the Tao Alliance. It was similar to Xiao Hua's scattered nascent soul cultivation. The appearance of the Immortal Realm Gate meant that a tribulation-passing cultivator could ascend at any time. However, ascension wasn't smooth sailing. They had to go through another heavenly tribulation. This heavenly tribulation was weaker than the Mahayana realm, and its main purpose was to change the laws of heaven and earth. However, this heavenly tribulation had a huge effect. It would completely change the cultivator's body and nascent soul. It was like breaking through and then rebuilding. At this stage, the tribulation-passing cultivator was the most powerful, but also the weakest. Even an early tribulation-passing cultivator could kill a late tribulation-passing cultivator if they broke through their defenses. Therefore, the Yilin continent's tribulation-passing cultivators usually kept the timing of sensing the Immortal Realm Gate and the location of their tribulation a secret. Now, that Taoist Yin was asking about this in front of so many cultivators, it was definitely a huge taboo. Seeing that everyone was silent, old man Gu Qiong smiled. Jian's question is rather abrupt, but don't blame him. Although everyone's sensing of the Immortal Realm Gate is a secret, if no one says anything at this time, no one will know how dangerous the Tao Alliance's situation is. How about this? This old man will speak first. Ah, that's fine. Alliance leader, you can speak first. Taoist Ji Yin smiled. Old man Gu Qiong stood up and said, "To tell you the truth, I've already sensed the exact location of the Celestial Gate 1,000 years ago, and I've already made preparations to ascend." However, about 600 years ago, the outline of the Celestial World Gate suddenly became blurry and even started to become ethereal. This old man thought that this old man's realm had dropped, so I hurriedly went into seclusion. After checking my realm to no avail, this old man discovered that it was the influence of a change in the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. At this moment, this old man suddenly heard news from the Tao Alliance that a cultivator from the Tsiupu Immortal Alliance, who had the highest chance of breaking through to the Tribulation Transcendent stage, had suddenly disappeared during the Tribulation Transcendent stage. This old man's heart thumped, and he had a bad feeling. Xian Xiaozi's heart thumped wildly when he heard this. He did not expect that a late-stage Tribulation Transcendent stage cultivator like Old Man Gu Qiong would know about Huang Qiong from the fallen immortal sect. Xian Xiaozi's heart trembled, and he was about to speak when Old Man Gu Qiong continued. Then, as I expected, in the past 600 years, No more cultivators at the peak of the Mahayana stage in the Tao Alliance were able to safely ascend to the Tribulation Transcendent stage. According to the Tao Alliance's records, over 1,000 Mahayana stage cultivators have perished during the Tribulation Transcendent stage. Almost every Immortal Alliance has at least 10 of them. Hiss! Xian Xiaozi was stunned when he heard this. The joy of obtaining Huang Qiong's spiritual master's remains and belongings after he failed the Tribulation Transcendent stage had completely vanished. Even the urge to speak had disappeared. Of course, the chances of a Mahayana stage cultivator surviving the Tribulation Transcendent stage are extremely low, so perhaps the death of 1,000 Mahayana stage cultivators doesn't mean anything. Old man Gu Qiong continued. However, in this old man's senses, the celestial gate is becoming more and more blurry, and it's even to the point where it can only tell me its location. This is definitely not normal, and it's definitely something that has never happened before in the history of the Tao Alliance. If this is the case for this old man, I'm sure all of you would be in the same situation, right? That's right, Ji Yin continued. This old man's senses are similar to Senior Gu Qiong's. However, I only sensed the location of the Celestial Gate 800 years ago, and before I could even sense the outline of the Celestial Gate, its location was gradually becoming more and more blurry. Now, to be honest, I can't even sense the location of the Celestial Gate. Sigh. After Jian finished speaking, an old man in linen clothes stood up and said, "My situation is between fellow Taoist Gu Qiong and fellow Taoist Jian. I always thought that there was a mistake in my cultivation, and I later thought that it might be due to the changes in the spiritual qi of heaven and earth, but I didn't expect the situation to be so dire. If we can't sense the celestial gate, how can we ascend? Wouldn't we be like those cultivators who didn't comprehend the tribulation transcendent stage and die in vain? The Yi family ancestor is right." Then a graceful woman stood up and said, "I've always been puzzled and wanted to ask all of you, but I didn't dare to. Now that I've seen it, the others might be better, but us late-stage tribulation transcendent stage cultivators are in imminent danger." Then more than 10 tribulation transcendent stage cultivators all spoke. None of them could sense the celestial gate. Although the other tribulation transcendent stage cultivators didn't speak, their expressions were gloomy. Clearly, the others were in the same situation as them. The celestial gate is blocked. What does our path of cultivation lead to? Taoist Ji Yin enunciated each word clearly. The Yi family ancestor thought for a moment and said, "I once thought that the celestial gate must still be there. However, due to the changes in the spiritual qi of heaven and earth, the celestial gate is too far away from us, and we can't sense it with our current cultivation. Perhaps, if we cultivate for another few thousand years, we'll be able to sense the celestial gate again." The Yi family ancestor is right. Ji Yin nodded. However, there are 3 problems with this idea. First, our Tao Alliance's cultivation methods can only be cultivated up to late-stage tribulation transcendent stage. There aren't any more cultivation methods for us to cultivate. Second, the Yilin continent's laws of heaven and earth don't allow late-stage tribulation transcendent stage cultivators to ascend once they reach the peak. Third, and this is what we'll discuss in a moment, due to the changes in the spiritual qi of heaven and earth, our lifespans have already begun to decrease. We don't have any extra time to cultivate more cultivation methods. Actually, it's very simple to solve these problems. The female cultivator spoke again. First, cultivation methods are created by humans. The changes in the spiritual qi of heaven and earth created a new world. We just have to create a cultivation method that surpasses late-stage tribulation transcendent stage. Second, if we leave the Yilin continent and head to another world where the spiritual qi of heaven and earth hasn't changed, wouldn't we still be able to ascend? The Yi family ancestor sneered and looked at the female cultivator. Fairy Mo Yun's words are too simple. Who knows what realm late-stage tribulation transcendent stage is and how to cultivate? Before you can create a cultivation method, your lifespan will be up. Everything will turn into flowing water. I think Fairy Mo Yun's second point does make some sense. Another cultivator wearing a Taoist crown stood up and said, I remember that there's a lost place in the east of the Wu Meng mountain range. The spiritual chi of heaven and earth there might not have changed. Why don't we just go there? Fu Bo Sanren, don't forget. The Yi family ancestor glanced at the cultivator and said, This is the spiritual chi of heaven and earth that has changed in the Yilan continent. Although the lost place is separated from the Yilan continent by the Wu Meng mountain range, the spiritual chi of heaven and earth, there is no difference between the lost place and the Yilan continent. How can there not be any changes in the spiritual chi of heaven and earth there? Besides, do you have the confidence to pass through the Wu Meng mountain range? Instead of thinking about the lost place, why don't you consider the 10,000 demon realm? Hearing this, old man Guqiong also said, This old man has also thought about the 10,000 demon realm. However, according to the records of the Tao Alliance, the 10,000 demon realm and the Yilan continent do not have a fixed spatial passage. Moreover, the 10,000 demon realm is full of demon clans. Each of them is several times more ferocious than our human clan. It is extremely difficult for us to survive in the 10,000 demon realm. Oh, also, the astral energy in the 10,000 demon realm is especially strong. It greatly suppresses the spiritual chi of heaven and earth that we humans can absorb into our bodies. We humans cannot cultivate in the 10,000 demon realm. Ji Yanjun nodded and said, Lord Alliance Leader is right. In I's eyes, the 10,000 demon realm is the same as the demon realm. We humans are food for both the demon clan and the demon clan. If we go to the 10,000 demon realm, we will end up being eaten by the demon clan. Then, are there any other realms that we can go to? Fu Bo Sanren hesitated and asked. The Yi family ancestor looked at Fu Bo Sanren with disdain and said, According to the records of the Yi family, there seems to be the Blue Rain realm and the Four-Season Sky nearby. However, this is only a record. It doesn't say where the spatial passages are. What is the situation of these two realms? Haha, very good. Ji Yanjun clapped his hands and said, Yi family ancestor, the Tao Alliance invited you here for this matter. Our Tao Alliance only has records of the Blue Rain realm and not the Four-Season Sky. There are also no records of spatial passages. Old man Guqiong nodded and said, In that case, the first topic has come to a conclusion. Creating a cultivation method is the long-term plan, and finding spatial passages to other realms is the temporary plan. After the Alliance Conference, send out people to find spatial passages. As soon as old man Guqiong finished speaking, Ji Yanjun immediately said, Immortal Alliance Leader, Sect Masters. Yes, all the cultivators at the Alliance Conference did not dare to be negligent. They all stood up and bowed. You all understand the reason for this matter. Ji Yanjun said word by word. This matter concerns our present, your future, and even the future cultivation of our Tao Alliance disciples. It cannot be delayed. Once the Alliance Conference is over, I will once again issue a Heavenly Alliance medallion, ordering all the sects and clans of the 81 immortal alliances of the Tao Alliance to gather all of their forces and search the skies and the earth of the Yilan continent, where the Tao Alliance is located, for any spatial rifts. We must find them. If anyone dares to delay, he, as a common saying in the mortal world, will be executed without mercy. Hearing Reverend Ji Yan's stern words, everyone knew that if there was any delay, Reverend Ji Yan would definitely take their lives. Therefore, no one dared to relax, and hurriedly replied in unison, Yes, we know. We won't dare to be negligent. Okay. Ji Yanjun waved his hand in satisfaction and said, Take a seat. Let's discuss the second topic. After everyone sat down cross-legged, Ji Yanjun said, The second topic, as I said earlier, is the loss of lifespan for cultivators above the spirit-severing stage. Jin, old man Guqiong interrupted. As far as I know, nascent soul cultivators can also sense the loss of lifespan. Hiss! Ji Yanjun sucked in a breath of cold air and said in shock, It starts at nascent soul cultivators. Ji Yanjun looked at the nearest immortal alliance master and asked, Daoist Swift Peng, is there any sign of this in your immortal alliance? The cultivator named Daoist Swift Peng hurriedly stood up. He was a tall body integration cultivator, and he replied, Vice Alliance Master, there was no sign of this before. It seems that 5 years ago, a few late-stage nascent soul disciples told me. Okay, I understand. Ji Yanjun nodded and gestured for Daoist Swift Peng to sit down. He then looked at everyone with a worried expression and said, Previously, I thought that mentioning this during the Alliance conference would cause panic among the Tao Alliance disciples. But now, it seems that even nascent soul cultivators' lifespan will be shortened. There is no need for us to hide it. Vice Alliance Master, the source of the loss of lifespan is naturally the change in the spiritual chi of heaven and earth. The question now is, Fairy Mo Yun asked softly, why is our lifespan decreasing? If I don't use my magic power, there won't be any obvious changes to my lifespan. But if I use my magic power, even my flying technique will have slight changes. Also, the loss of lifespan is closely related to the power of the spell. Ji Yanjun smiled bitterly and said, Fairy Mo Yun has already told me the answer to this question. Why do you still need me to answer you? Old man Gu Qiong smiled and said, I've thought about it carefully. Everyone, think about it. Why do we have such a long lifespan? Isn't it because we cultivate? Then, Old man Gu Qiong explained the relationship between lifespan and magic power. He even explained the difference between the physical bodies of demon beasts and humans, as well as the relationship between the spiritual chi of heaven and earth. It was basically similar to what Xiao Hua and Nua Yeqing had said that day. But in the end, he said, Unfortunately, by now, I already know the relationship between the spiritual chi of heaven and earth and the physical body, but I still haven't found an effective method. After all, there are body cultivators in the Tao Alliance, and their realms are extremely high. But they can also sense the loss of lifespan. It's just that the loss of lifespan is slower than that of ordinary cultivators. The Yi family patriarch nodded and said, According to what Alliance Master said, there must be some unknown factor that affects lifespan. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian. Vote for it, give it a recommendation vote, collect it, and give it a tip. Chapter 4881. That's right. Old man Gu Qiong replied. Man is the leader of all living things and is favored by heaven. The human body is the most suitable form for cultivation in the world. So the human body is the most mysterious thing in the world. What we know is only 1 out of 10,000. The mutated heaven and earth spirit chi must have affected some parts of our bodies. Fairy Mo Yun smiled bitterly. Alliance Master, what you said is no different from not saying anything. Even you don't know the secret. So how can we know it? How can the other cultivators in the Tao Alliance know it? What's the use of putting this second topic on the agenda? Fairy, you're wrong. Taoist Ji Yin smiled. Our Tao Alliance has a long history, and our spiritual spells are broad and profound. Our Tao Alliance cultivates the nascent soul, while the Heaven Alliance cultivates the so-called essence soul. Only some sects near the Wuming mountain range cultivate the nascent soul. It's said that there are some cultivation techniques for the Golden Core 9 transformation in the Diamond Mountain range. Even though I'm a cultivator in the late stage of the tribulation passing stage, I feel that what I know is just a drop in the ocean. Who dares to say that they know everything in the Yilin continent? The reason why I brought this matter out for discussion is to gather the wisdom of the masses. I want to see which sect, which aristocratic family, or which rogue cultivator has a solution. Actually, let's not talk about a solution. Even an idea is precious. After Taoist Jian finished speaking, Fairy Mo Yin shook her head with a sigh and sat down. Everyone, Jian's spiritual master said again, you all heard what I said just now? If you have any ideas, or if you've encountered a different situation, feel free to share your thoughts. Unfortunately, for the time it took to finish a meal, the entire Alliance conference was silent. No one spoke a word. Taoist Jian frowned and said, "Could it be that all of you have a lifespan? Pill cultivators? Demon cultivators? Equipment cultivators? Body cultivators? Demonic cultivators?" Still, no one answered. Obviously, no matter what kind of cultivation method they used, they had a lifespan problem. Old man Gu Qiong said with a smile, "Actually, you don't have to stick to any technique. As long as you have some ideas, even if they are unimaginable, they might be of some use." Unfortunately, Xiaohua was not here. Nuo Yeqing was not here. Lu Qingyu and Yu Hua were also not here. No one in the Manmeng Hui could say anything special. Alas, all right. Ji Yin looked at old man Gu Qiong and said with a wry smile, "If that's the case, I'll issue an order after the Alliance meeting to ask the Dao Alliance for ways to stop the loss of lifespan. Anyone who can come up with useful suggestions will be rewarded handsomely." Actually, Elder Yi smiled. "If we can find a spatial passage to another realm, won't everything be solved?" The realm passage. Old man Gu Qiong shook his head slightly. "It's just a hope. It's realistic for us, but it's too far away for other cultivators." Ahem, Lord Alliance leader. At this moment, on a tree branch in the distance, a short cultivator who looked like a dwarf coughed and said hesitantly, "Junior has a suggestion." "Oh, which Immortal Alliance are you from? Please tell me." Ji Yin Spiritual Master raised his eyebrows and said with a smile, "I'm Yelu Qing, the sect leader of Lianyun Mountain in the Lofty Creek Immortal Alliance." The cultivator said respectfully, "I think that since the Taoist cultivators who cultivate the nascent soul will lose their lifespan, what about the cultivators who cultivate the nascent soul in the Heaven Alliance? Will they be different?" I thought. Ji Yin Spiritual Master's expression changed slightly. Just as he was about to scold the cultivator, old man Gu Qiong hurriedly said with a smile, That's right. Yelu Qing, you have a great idea. I didn't think of going to the Heaven Alliance to find out more about the cultivators who cultivate the nascent soul. Ji Yin, after the Alliance meeting, you must send people to the Heaven Alliance immediately. Yes, Alliance leader. Ji Yin Spiritual Master replied with a smile. Although there aren't many cultivators who cultivate the nascent soul in the Heaven Alliance, they're still part of the Taoist sect. Perhaps we can learn something from them. As Gu Qiong spoke, a palm-sized golden object appeared in his hand. He looked at Yelu Qing and said, Yelu Qing, your suggestion will be useful to the Tao Alliance. This is a spiritual weapon that I obtained a long time ago. I've never refined it, so I don't know how to use it. After the Alliance meeting, I'll ask the Tao Alliance to send it to you as a reward for your suggestion. Gu Qiong handed the spiritual weapon to Ji Yin, Spiritual Master. Buzz! The entire Alliance meeting was in an uproar. This was a spiritual weapon. Although there were many cultivators in the Tao Alliance, and the Yilin continent was huge, how many cultivators own a spiritual weapon? Lord Alliance leader, I have an idea. Soon a cultivator jumped out and said, I think so too. Before the cultivator could finish speaking, another cultivator chimed in. In just a moment, more than 10 cultivators spoke at the same time. It was obvious that Gu Qiong's generous offer had worked. Damn it, he won't act until he sees an incentive. Ji Yin's Spiritual Master cursed inwardly, but he still put on a smile and said, Don't worry, everyone. Write down your ideas in jade slips and give them to your Alliance leaders. After the Alliance meeting, ask them to send it to Senior Gu Qiong for review. If he thinks it's useful, the Tao Alliance will reward you handsomely. The few cultivators who had just stood up opened their mouths and wanted to say something, but when they saw Ji Yan's face, they swallowed their words. Although the rewards might not be as good as the rewards now, with old man Gu Qiong in charge, they believed that things would be fair, so they sat down with peace of mind. A few impatient cultivators had already taken out jade slips to record their ideas. After everyone quieted down, Ji Yin's Spiritual Master spoke again. Speaking of the primordial spirit cultivation method, the third topic I want to talk about is related to the Heaven Alliance. According to the Jingxian Alliance, Chongxi Immortal Alliance, and Luhong Immortal Alliance, which are closest to the Heaven Alliance, The Heaven Alliance has sent many cultivators to infiltrate our Tao Alliance in the past 10 years. It seems that they are up to something. Moreover, 5 years ago, a very strange thing happened in the Burning Field Immortal Alliance. Tens of thousands of people from the famous Peng family in the Jianghe country disappeared overnight. Alliance leader Li Bo of the Burning Field Immortal Alliance personally went to investigate, but he didn't find any trace of them. When the Tao Alliance sent more than 10 people there, they found an extremely secretive and huge teleportation array under the Peng family's ancestral temple. Then, after careful investigation, even this old man was shocked. The Peng clan actually came from ancient times. The Peng clan has a magical formation passed down from their ancestors. Why don't you guys take a guess as to what that magical formation is? Everyone was silent. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, give a recommendation vote, collect it, or reward it. Chapter 4882. Without waiting for them to speak, Jian roared. Heart-cleansing winnowing basket array. Heart-cleansing winnowing basket array. It's a supreme array recorded in our Tao sect's ancient records, used to defend against extraterrestrial demons. This array has been hidden in our Tao Alliance for so many years, but no one knows about it. Now that the spiritual qi of heaven and earth is changing, we need the help of this ancient array. However, the Heaven Alliance stole the heart-cleansing, winnowing basket array from the Peng family at this critical moment. This is nothing. Taoist Ji Yin seemed to be laughing out of anger as he said, Do you know what angered me the most? Everyone remained silent. What angers me the most is my favorite disciple, perfected Shiyu, whom you're all familiar with. He was actually sent by the Heaven Alliance. Jian Jinren's breathing quickened as he exclaimed, He was in front of me for so many years. Not only did I not discover him, I even taught him the inheritance of my Chongxi sect. I really can't imagine what kind of promise the Heaven Alliance gave him. This promise is nothing compared to the thousands of years of nurturing and teaching in the Tao Alliance. Xian Xiaozi did not know what the others were thinking, but he was extremely shocked. Ji Yan's identity and the cultivation base of his favorite disciple. Perfected Shiyu was one of the most famous cultivators in the Tao Alliance. Although he did not have a high position in the Tao Alliance, everyone believed that Perfected Shiyu would become a key figure in the Tao Alliance when the time came. However, such a person with a bright future had betrayed the Tao Alliance. Defecting from the Tao Alliance to the Heaven Alliance was like a slap in the face to Perfected Ji Yin and all the cultivators in the Tao Alliance. Damn it, if it was me, how could I? Xian Xiaozi thought to himself. However, at this moment, an unbelievable thought appeared in his mind. He raised his head and could not help but ask, Vice Alliance leader, could it be that the Heaven Alliance has a way to repair one's lifespan? Ji Yin was shocked as well. Then, as if he suddenly realized something, he said, Yes, you're right. That's right. If the Heaven Alliance did not have a way to repair one's lifespan, how could Shiyu give up his current identity? What's more, I haven't finished yet. Many famous cultivators of the Tao Alliance have disappeared during these 10 years. Old man Guqiao nodded. He looked at Ji Yin and said, If that's the case, Ji Yin, it's time for us to use our trump cards. Otherwise, the Heaven Alliance will laugh at us. Yes, I understand. Although Taoist Yin was also a late-stage tribulation crossing cultivator, he was still a junior in front of old man Guqiao. After the matter with the Heaven Alliance, I would like to remind all of you that there have been many demon clansmen appearing in our Tao Alliance recently. These demon clansmen might have been hiding in our Yilan mainland after the last Taoist demon war. I reckon that they have seen the change in the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and are using it to stir up trouble. Taoist Ji Yin calmed his anger and said, According to reliable sources, the devil race seems to be up to something. Nearly 2 million disciples from 20 or so families have been killed in our Tao Alliance's territory. But even now, we still haven't figured out what they are trying to do. If you see any devils, you must attack them without mercy. After you kill them, you must send the news back to the Tao Alliance. Yes, we understand. The group of cultivators replied. Earlier, this old man said that we will be discussing a few important matters today. The previous discussions all involve high-level cultivators. Later on, we will be discussing low-level cultivators and new disciples. Taoist Ji Yin said solemnly, if there are no new disciples, then there are no low-level cultivators. Without low-level cultivators, there can be no high-level cultivators. Without high-level cultivators, our Tao Alliance would cease to exist. Taoist Ji Yin looked around and said in a heavy tone, I'm sure all of you know what I'm going to say, right? Alas, of course. Fairy Mo Yun said with a sigh. Which sect isn't worried about the selection of disciples? Which sect doesn't have to worry about their cultivation methods? Yes, that's right. Taoist Ji Yin didn't hide anything. I'll be frank with all of you. Up until now, my Chongshi sect hasn't found a suitable method to select disciples. Moreover, the cultivation techniques that my disciples have modified haven't had any special effects. Judging from this, I believe that there should be a decent sect or clan in our Tao Alliance that can perfectly resolve these two issues. Therefore, this old man invited Lord Alliance Master to come to the Alliance Conference today to ask him to lead the way. All the sects and clans will work together once again. Don't hide anything. Tell him all the hard work we have done in the past. I hope he can find a way for our Tao Alliance's juniors to survive. Taoist Ji Yin then took out a jade slip and respectfully handed it to Old Man Gu Qiong. Lord Alliance Master, these are 3 cultivation techniques that my Chongshi sect has modified over the past several hundred years and a method to select disciples. Please take a look. Old Man Gu Qiong nodded slightly and took a look. Then, he raised his voice and said, the Chongshi sect's method to select disciples is called bone sifting. It looks like they're selecting disciples based on their bone attributes. Over the past 300 years, they've selected 30,000 disciples. At the same time, the Chongshi sect modified 3 cultivation techniques for the Qi condensation realm, earth, wood, and water. The 30,000 disciples each cultivated these 3 techniques, but Old Man Gu Qiong hesitated for a moment before continuing. Of the 30,000 disciples, only 4,000 reached peak Qi condensation. The rest were stuck at a bottleneck. Of the 4,000 disciples, not a single one reached foundation establishment. The cultivators were in an uproar. Taoist Ji Yin smiled wryly. It's clear that our bone sifting didn't select disciples who were suitable for cultivation. Moreover, the cultivation techniques we modified were also failures. Of course, I've given the bone sifting method and the modified cultivation techniques to the Alliance Master. If you're interested, you can apply to the Tao Alliance. The Tao Alliance won't hide anything. On a leaf not far from Fairy Mo Yun, a cultivator in a long robe sat cross-legged. He hadn't said much and had only watched indifferently. After hearing Taoist Jian's words, he hesitated for a moment before standing up and saying, since Taoist Jian is so generous, I won't hide anything. Although I'm a rogue cultivator, I've taken in a few disciples. However, I couldn't refuse their pleas, so I created a method to select disciples and modified a cultivation technique. Senior Gu Qiong, please take a look. Good. Old Man Gu Qiong clapped his hands. Even the proud and aloof Yu Hongzi has spoken. The Tao Alliance will definitely gain a lot today. Old Man Gu Qiong took a look at the jade slip and said, Yu Hongzi's disciple selection method is different from the bone sifting method. It's based on the meridians and is called pulse identification. Old Man Gu Qiong then explained Yu Hongzi's pulse identification method and the effects of the modified cultivation technique. Because Yu Hongzi was a rogue cultivator and didn't have many disciples, his pulse identification method and modified cultivation technique hadn't been tested much. However, based on the limited experience of Yu Hongzi's disciples, these 2 cultivation techniques weren't much better than the bone sifting method. It seems that I'll have to throw a brick to attract jade. When Old Man Gu Qiong finished speaking, The Yi family patriarch stood up and took out a jade slip from his pocket. He handed it to old man Gu Qiong and said, "As everyone knows, the bloodline of the Yi family's descendants is different, so we don't need to select any disciples. After the heaven and earth spirit Qi changed, we modified 2 cultivation techniques. These 2 cultivation techniques are commonly used in the Yi family and are targeted at the descendants of the Yi family. Now that I've taken them out, perhaps they will be useful to the Dao Alliance." Old man Gu Qiong didn't answer immediately. Instead, he scanned the jade slip with his divine sense and pondered for a moment before solemnly putting it away. He then bowed to the Yi family patriarch and said, "Yi Zhen, I thank the Yi family on behalf of all the disciples of the Dao Alliance. Although these 2 cultivation techniques aren't useful for their cultivation, the modification method, if I'm not wrong, it should be more than twice as good as the previous 2. What?" Both Ji Yin and Yu Hongzi were stunned. They stared at old man Gu Qiong in disbelief. The Yi family patriarch bowed humbly and said, "Senior Gu Qiong, you're too polite. The Yi family is a member of the Dao Alliance in the Yilin continent. Since we've made some progress in modifying the cultivation techniques, we naturally want to share it with everyone. If the Dao Alliance has any other good things, I hope you won't forget about the Yi family." "Ha, of course, of course." Old man Gu Qiong smiled and handed 2 jade slips to Yi Zhen. "These are from Yu Hongzi and Ji Yin. Take a look first." "Okay." Yi Zhen took the jade slips and made 2 copies before returning them to old man Gu Qiong. Then he sat down cross-legged and read them. Since Yi Zhen had read their jade slips, Yu Hongzi and Ji Yin felt relieved. Sure enough, old man Gu Qiong waved his hand and handed the 2 jade slips to them. "Hiss!" Ji Yin gasped and looked at Yi Zhen in disbelief. He said in a low voice, "Patriarch Yi, I underestimated the Yi family." "Ha, so be it. It's all in the past. It doesn't matter." After reading the 2 jade slips, the Yi family patriarch replied with a smile, "Let's see what other fellow Taoists have to say." "That's right." Ji Yin raised the jade slips and said with a smile, "Senior Gu Qiong was wrong. The Yi family's modification of the cultivation techniques is ingenious. It's several times more effective than my modification. If we modify it according to the Yi family's thinking, we can even modify foundation establishment and golden core cultivation techniques, let alone Qi refinement techniques. Everyone, if anyone has a new cultivation technique or a new disciple selection technique, please share it. I'll let you study it first." You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.